Good evening and welcome to the July 9th, 2024 edition of the Downers Grove Village Council. Mayor Barnett is off impersonating Clark W. Griswold Jr., so I will be in the chair tonight. Would you all please rise and join us in the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Rosa, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Barnett. Commissioner Jose.
Here.
Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit. Here. Commissioner Gilmartin.
Here.
Commissioner Glover.
Here.
Commissioner Tully.
Here.
Commissioner Davenport.
Here. Thank you. Is there a motion with regard to the minutes?
I don't have a microphone right now.
Michael, can you pass down the mic?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt the meeting minutes from June 18th, 2024 as presented.
Second.
Any comments, questions, or corrections with regard to the minutes? Any public comment? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? The minutes are adopted unanimously. That brings us to item 4 on the agenda, which is public comments. This is an opportunity to address the council with regard to items that are not appearing on tonight's agenda. We ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes or so. And at this time, we welcome you to come up and speak.
Hello,
Good evening.
my name is Vivian Grella. I'm a 40-year resident of Downers Grove and also a former District 58 teacher. Been retired for a couple years now. Anyhow, I'm here to speak on behalf of Mr. Bo Martin, who you know is a candidate for the library board. Mr. Martin has a doctorate from the University of Chicago in public policy. He has advanced degrees in accounting, economics, and statistics. He works with dueling parties to determine fair compensations between medical providers and insurance companies. His approach is to listen to all opinions and is a non-combative being, more of a middle type of guy. I believe he will be fiscally moderate, as accounting is one of his strengths. He also loves libraries, having a specific interest in poetry. So, all-around great guy who truly cares about our community. And in closing, I just want to say that after all the disputes, controversy involving the library, village council, residents, over the past year, I believe Mr. Martin is the perfect candidate to help everyone move forward in doing what is right for all residents. Appointing Mr. Martin will restore the confidence we, the residents, have in each and every one of you as village council members. So I hope you'll do the right thing and consider him for a candidate for the library board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on items not appearing on tonight's agenda? Good evening.
Hello, my name is Claire Negreco. I've been a business owner and business property owner 38 years in Downers Grove. So I know there's some controversy about removing the parking spaces to make the sidewalks bigger. And I just want to say that at the property owners, business owners meeting that I went to, I was told by the company that was hired that there was no other alternatives. That's the only alternative that they had right now in order to make more outdoor dining and more space, I guess, for the diners. They said they were looking at other alternatives, but because of the way our downtown is set up, they didn't have any. When we come here and we speak, we're told afterwards, after we sit down, they're tired of hearing that. I would like to know what the other alternative is. The green space we have is owned by the Masons, that is behind my building. We have alleyways, but they really aren't set up. I don't know what you would do to convert them so people would be comfortable dining in an alley. Another round has a little section next to theirs the Bailey Doyle has that. That's stuff that's already there. That's not stuff that they're looking into changing. So I'd like to know what the alternative is. When I went to the meeting, I did suggest, and then when I talked to Mike Davenport at the fest, I did tell him what I suggested. I said, why don't we do something to bring a lot of people into the area and maybe close off the street the first month, the first weekend of every month, and do some live entertainment. And not in front of a business, the street, but you can alternate it. 1 month, do it over by where Pete's Coffee, there's the parking lot for the Dooley, and then there's the alleyway by Capri. So if you set up a band in that area, you wouldn't really be blocking people from their businesses or anything like that. Then the next time you can go down, the next month or however you did it, you could go down over by where Bailey Doyle is, and then you have Emmett's, and you have the street there. So if you blocked the street from, as soon as you cross the tracks, like Burlington there, and you blocked Main Street, and you did some kind of, like ring in every new month with Downers Grove, and you had some bands that you invited to come play or something like that, that would bring other people in from other towns to come into the area. And I think if you did something like that, maybe the workers that would have to set that up, if you did it like Friday and Saturday, might have to pay overtime, so it might be more feasible to keep it up through Sunday. And then maybe you can get some art shows or other things that these other people are more interested in doing. And you can get more people into the community instead of spending all this money to take away parking where we really don't have alternative for additional parking. I mean, I've tried to give you all my suggestions on getting some additional parking, but we're having another bar with tapas opening up pretty soon where Busy Bee Bakery is. That's even more cars. You know, I have someone that works at the sushi place over there, and she's like, I don't know what we're gonna do. So I don't know if you're gonna have to like have employers of these places buy parking spots somewhere or do something, because it's the more of these businesses that take up for their employees so many parking spots, and then you're going to bring customers, it's going to be hard. And I know saving 26 spots or 27 spots isn't a lot, but it's something. And doing something like having something like that, I mean, you can market it a certain way, I think would be more opportunity to these other businesses and not just the restaurants. You know, bring other people in. So it wouldn't be just at night. It could be during the afternoon. You could do other things, get together with, you know, maybe the library and have stuff for the kids to come out. There's other things that you could do to help some of the other businesses that are struggling and hurting. Just my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. And the important part of to take away from the conversation, whether it's with the consultants or with members of the council, is that the decision hasn't been made yet. We're still taking input, and we're going to actually talk about downtown and Fairview and the bike and ped plan later tonight. And this is going to be a very long process. But if you take any one thing away from it, I hope you'll take this, that the consultants are consultants. And they're going to give us recommendations and give us alternatives. And among the alternatives is doing nothing, keeping outdoor dining the way it is. Among the alternatives is eliminating it. But it's this body that makes the determination, ultimately. And we're going to do that after careful consideration and a lot more public input.
Janet Winningham. I speak somewhat at the risk of knowing that you all get the last word, as you have in the past, but nevertheless, I first want to address some of the remarks that and comments that made by Commissioners Davenport and Gilmartin in response to concerns expressed by somebody else last meeting that the guiding DG process is going too fast. You said you're putting the brakes on a bit because you want to get it right. And I appreciate it that you want to get it right. I'm not sure what that looks like or what that means, what right means, but I appreciate and trust your intentions. Thank you. However, it looks to me, and in some of these conversations, and maybe tonight will be different, but that some of you just want to get it done, and get it done in a 2-year time frame before the next election, so that you can count the votes to make sure that you get it done the way you want it done. And I hope that's not the case, but it is certainly set up for a 2-year time frame for reasons that only you know. Secondly, I want to address the record of the 2023 long-range plan, the guiding DG process generally, and the existing conditions reports. I'm speaking, and again, this is timely. I'm speaking in the context that nothing has been decided, as you've just said. The process is merely gathering information right now, and so forth. And while several of these elements of the program could be critiqued, you'll not be surprised that my focus is on the downtown streetscape plan. First, to say that no decisions have been made is ludicrous. It's just silly. Formal votes have not been taken, I will grant you that, but hundreds of decisions have been made along the way here. And the planning sessions behind these meetings in the conference room. For example, you reviewed the 2017 plan, you determined what items you wanted to address. Those are decisions. As of a year ago, there were 24 potential action items. You decided on 5 or 6 high-priority action items. One of those potential action items was to enhance the downtown outdoor dining program. That wasn't to consider it. That wasn't to discuss it. It was an action item. And the description of that action item was, this project consists of creating permanent public and private areas for the use of outdoor cafes. Outdoor cafes would no longer be located in on-street parking spaces surrounded by concrete barriers. Sidewalks would be physically expanded to accommodate areas for outdoor cafes. Some existing on-street parking spaces would be permanently removed. There's nothing indefinite about that or doubt for that intention. The project was selected as a high priority item. But the current description has been softened. It now reads, and I think weasel words have been inserted, the project consists of permanent public and private areas for use as outdoor cafes. Outdoor cafes could be located in a variety of areas, including on-street parking spaces, sidewalks, alleys, and parking lots. Those are new. Sidewalks may be physically expanded to accommodate areas for outdoor cafes. Some existing on-street parking spaces may be permanently removed. The intention, though, is still clear. If you have no intention of implementing this action item, it would not have been labeled a high priority item. And in that regard, that is consistent with both this, the one thing that's consistent with both of those descriptions is the word some, and I can't help it, I have to do this. I double checked. The word some refers to an unspecified number, a thing that is not known, which in certain contexts can mean all. It more commonly means a number less than all, but Mr. Tully and Mr. Jose, it never means none. Going with the common usage that some parking spaces may be permanently removed to enhance outdoor dining, it can mean a few, or many, or even all but one. It is inconceivable that you would intend to remove no parking spaces in order to enhance outdoor dining. If you want to eliminate the outdoor dining, fine by me. In support of the conclusions that we have, the streetscape plan that you've put out in your materials show streets with no on-street parking, none. So the idea that it's a false conclusion or an inaccurate conclusion that there may be no parking spaces available on street parking, it's just, these are the materials that you have put out. It is reasonable to conclude that you mean them. By definition, the purpose of these materials is to reflect the village vision, and that's you. In addition, the Downers Grove summary of kickoff meetings, the transportation and parking session, reflects a concern that there is a lack of downtown parking. That concern is reflected a number of times in that summary. I didn't attend these meetings. That was not me. The concern, that while the kickoff summary identifies the concern, in a number of places, and including inadequate parking in the garage. The existing conditions report does not address parking as a concern at all. Why does this report not discuss availability or lack of parking in connection with the parking lots, alleys, and parking spaces that may be permanently removed to afford widening of sidewalks for outdoor dining? Why is there no discussion of alternate parking, as Ms. Greco indicated?
Hey, Janet, we're at about 6 minutes. Could you wrap it up, please?
Okay. You must have some vision in mind. If you don't intend to remove outdoor parking, then say so. But in the meantime, the concerns and fears of the residents who have believe that this program may drastically change the character and utility of downtown for residents and businesses remains legitimate. Thank you.
Thank you. And just for clarity's sake, the high priority action item process was created and intended to kind of define items that will take an incredible amount of staff bandwidth and both staff time and council time. So we put things on the high priority action item list because they're big, not necessarily because anything is already concluded. If it were concluded, we would have taken the votes that you've referred to. Any other public comment?
Selma Moberg. I came tonight not intending to speak, but because of the cutoffs that you do when people are in the middle of talking, I mean, come on, 1 minute over? That's ridiculous. And, you know, you talk about communication. You want communication with the public, correct? But demeaning them and belittling them, especially when somebody's got facts and has been digging and digging with all the facts about parking, and they get cut off. I've gotten cut off. Clorinda's gotten cut off. Oh, you're 2 minutes over. Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, what do you got to do tonight but to listen to the public? You want communication? Then you should listen to the public. And cutting us off is wrong. And last week I listened, or the last meeting, you, Jose, said, you said mischaracterization, running around telling people we're eliminating all people's creative, we're misinterpreting the information. Creative misinformation is what you said about parking downtown. Parking is an incredibly important detail in downtown. You want people to come downtown, they need parking. Not everybody can walk downtown. And cutting them off midstream is so rude.
Thank you. Actually, what I was talking about was that we're not eliminating all parking downtown. And to run around and say that, I believe, is mischaracterizing the truth. I stand by what I said. Any other public comment?
My name is Ian Ogden. You guys know me, I'm sure. Yeah, I was just going to echo something about the guiding DG system process. There's not a lot of feedback from that process, and there's not a lot of transparency, and I think that it would be important to have more information about how things are proceeding and what exactly is happening. I mean, all we've really seen is that there's a website, there was a kickoff event, and there are pop-up events at like local, the Rotary Grove Fest and some other places too. But it would be really useful to be able to see exactly what the progress is, what kinds of discussions are being had, so that we can kind of know where things are going. Because obviously it is a very important process for this town, for the future of the downtown layout and just pretty much architectural standards, guidelines for the village as a whole. So I think it would be really a nice thing to be a little bit more transparent on that so we could all kind of know what's going on and maybe get a chance to participate in some more ways. Because, I mean, let's be honest, pop-up events don't happen very often. And aside from that, the only other option to give input is hosting your own event, which, I mean, you know, I don't know how many people are going to do that, but yeah, that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment on items not appearing on tonight's agenda? Okay. That brings us to our consent agenda. May I have a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Is there any public comment with regard to the consent agenda? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose.
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. That brings us to our active agenda. We have 3 items. Is there a motion with regard to item A?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance rezoning certain property located at 2424 Ogden Avenue, 2424 Ogden Planned Unit Development as presented.
Second.
Any comments or other input from members of the public with regard to item A? Any comments from members of the council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose.
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. Is there a motion with regard to item B?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance amending the zoning ordinance of the Village of Downers Grove, Illinois to designate the property at 2424 Ogden Avenue as Planned Unit Development Number 69 as
Second.
presented.
Oh, excuse me. Second.
Any public comment with regard to item B? Members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose.
Aye. That matter also passes unanimously. That brings us to item C. May I have a motion?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to adopt an ordinance authorizing a special use for 2424 Ogden Avenue to permit a vehicle repair and maintenance business as presented.
Second.
One last time. Any comments or questions from members of the public? Members of the council? I'd just like to thank you for the continued investment in Downers Grove. The lack of comment that you're hearing tonight is, I think, indicative only of the support for the proposal. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit,
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin,
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport,
Aye.
Commissioner Tully,
Aye.
Commissioner Glover,
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose.
Aye. That matter also passes unanimously. That ends our active agenda and brings us to our first reading agenda. We have one item, and I will turn it over to Manager Fieldman.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, and that one item is planned improvements on Washington Street to improve drainage. And here to present background information on this project is our Director of Engineering, Scott Vasco.
Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, Council.
Good evening.
Tonight I'll be presenting on the Washington Street drainage improvements, which is one of our stormwater capital projects for 2024. So the improvements are located on Washington Street between Blanchard and 59th and along Blanchard between Washington and Webster. The improvements will address minor flooding during large storm events, removal of storm sewer on private property, and the lack of proper size storm sewer in the area. The project was bid in June, and 9 bids were received, with Swallow Construction Corporation being the low bidder at $843,406.99, which also includes a 5% contingency. The contractor has satisfactorily completed projects within the village, including the water main project from 2017, and they were our 2024 stormwater and maintenance project contractors this year, and they did a good job on that. So the work's scheduled to be completed between July and November of this year. So some of the quick facts about the project: it includes 1,400 feet of 12-inch and 18-inch storm sewer, installation of storm sewer inlets and manholes, roadway patching and resurfacing. The project will also take advantage of the underground contractor's favorable pricing and include other items such as sidewalk removal and replacement, and we'll be addressing the lead service lines in that area as well. With that, I'll open it up to questions you might have.
Thank you, Scott. I'll start with any questions or comments from members of the council. Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit.
Yes, I appreciate you putting this on here. As most folks know, I live in the Fairmount area, and so I've gotten a lot of questions about this particular project. There were a lot of folks that were wondering why we wouldn't put in curb and gutter here, and I know I had some really good conversations with staff about that. with regard to cost, the topography of the land, width of the roadway, right-of-way, some of those things. Do you mind just kind of give a quick summary or a couple slides about kind of the rationale of why we might choose this over that?
Yeah, I'd be happy to do that. For some background, about a third of the street segments in our village do not currently have curb and gutter. Sometimes it's referred to as a rural cross-section. It's been a longstanding practice of this council that this curb and gutter is not installed when we do work on those streets unless the curb and gutter is necessary to safely and properly convey stormwater. So every once in a while, you'll see like a V curb or a ribbon curb in some of these rural cross-section streets. Those are only in cases where it's necessary to properly convey water. So in this case, we looked into this at the request of a couple of council members. It would be a significant deviation from that longstanding village practice. It would increase project costs by an estimated factor of about 3 times, perhaps more. And it would delay the project until at least next year, allowing time for redesign. But as far as the specifics that Commissioner Sadowski-Feger were talking about that are germane to this stretch, it would require regrading of the right-of-way, impacting existing sidewalks, existing parkway trees, driveway aprons, and culverts. Some of those would have to be removed and replaced with new grading setting in. There would have to be additional paving work on the street pavement itself so that the pavement would align and could be properly framed up with curb. Right now, a couple things happen. The width of that pavement varies as you go through the segment, and it actually meanders slightly through the right-of-way. And then if we did full curb and gutter, it would require some grading on private properties to make sure that the drainage works effectively. So this has come up several times over the years in long-range planning. If the council would like to discuss this, we think a better way than a project-by-project discussion would be a big policy discussion framed up in LRP, as Mayor Pro Tem Jose talked about, and that is because it would have significant impacts on our capital projects budget and would require a discussion about revenues and other trade-offs village-wide. Hope that helps, Commissioner.
Yes, it does very much. Thank you. And it is just really helpful to kind of have all of this out there so that we can have, a more in-depth discussion with residents as well. And I assume with all of this project, as we talk about the roadway patching, resurfacing, removal, I know many of us are familiar with a lot of those streets and areas and kind of how where folks park on the side of the street can start to look rough after a while. And I assume this will kind of take care of some of those, and then we'll continue to maintain as we go once we fix some of those issues.
Yes, it will formalize it a little bit and clean it up a little bit, yes.
All right, thank you so much.
Commissioner Davenport.
Yeah, so I'll add, I'm also a South Sider, so live just south of this. I know that this is a project that's really needed in that stretch, so I'm glad that we're doing it. Regarding the curb and gutter, I mean, if we were to move forward with something like that at this point, be setting quite a precedent. So I agree with, it's something that maybe future council wants to have conversation about. And also, I wonder, there's probably one of the reasons why past councils have decided to leave this alone is because the people that live on those streets kind of like that maybe a little bit more rural character. So I'm sure there's some that would want some change, but I have to also think about what the benefit would be, right? Like, we don't need to use the curbs to convey the water. We're able to effectively control things, and by cleaning things up a little bit and a little bit more formalizing those shoulders, as we've done in other areas, I think this really makes the most sense. It's hard for me to justify just in thinking about it apart from a policy change, just why that the cost benefit just isn't there. And I also appreciate the fact that we're taking care of the lead line replacements while we're doing this too, because that was actually a question I had kind of penciled in my notes from a week or two ago, just more generally, right? And then see this presentation, I was like, oh, there answers my question. We're really being thoughtful about taking care of these things all together, so we don't have to come back several years and lose that economy of scale. And as has been shared, we've gotten good pricing from the contractors on this project. So I plan to support this resolution. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilmartin.
Thank you. Will the finished project match what the surrounding streets have as well in terms of that?
It will.
Okay.
It will. It'll basically be going back to what it is now. The edges will be redefined
Yep.
We get a crisper edge. We'll get new shoulder stone in there, but it'll look, the cross-section will still be what's out there now.
Okay. And then I guess maybe for next week, if I can just request maybe a picture of an example of what that might look like, that would be great. Just what the finish might look like, example we've done it somewhere else, just so I can have that context.
Yep.
As a North Sider. Thank you.
We can do that, sure.
Commissioner Tully.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem. As a middle sider, or centrist as they call us, first of all, this is entirely consistent with many stormwater projects in the past. So I'll just start by saying that this is a significant investment in infrastructure and the village's commitment to improving stormwater management. And it's through good planning and good financial stewardship that we have the funds to be able to do projects like this that deliver a lot of bang for the buck. And that leads me to my second point, is that in other projects that we've done over the last at least 20 years, we have tried to do what is necessary to achieve the benefit and yet reserve money so that we can do more projects. I can think of a number of other projects where there was the, shall we say, the heated leather seats or heated leather cup holder version, and then there was the what's the most effective way to control stormwater, bring benefit to the neighborhood, and make sure that we have funds that we can use in other neighborhoods, because we have to be cognizant, of course, of the entire community. And third, Commissioner Davenport is absolutely right. Like with other projects, I guarantee you that if we went and said we were going to do this there, we would have just as many people showing up saying, I don't want it. So I think this is entirely consistent with good use of our funds that we've accumulated for this very purpose in the Stormwater Management Fund, and glad to see it happen. Thank you.
Thank you. For my part, I share the distaste for doing this on a one-off basis. That said, I have tilted at the curb and gutter windmill before. To borrow a term from Commissioner Gilmartin, I think my idea of a complete street would include curb and gutter, but I'm one guy. So if any of my colleagues are interested in that conversation, I'd love to have it as part of long-range planning at some point, but I think that is where it belongs. Any comments, questions, or other feedback from the public?
Sort of generally, or just this topic?
Well, with regard to this topic.
Next time.
Okay. All right. I'll bring it back to the council one last time. Anything else? Okay. Thank you, Mr. Fieldman.
And that concludes our first reading, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That brings us to council member reports. This is an opportunity to talk about goings-on in the community, and we also have one new business item, but I'll save that for the end and start taking a few comments. I will start to my right with Commissioner Davenport.
No report, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
Thank you.
No
Commissioner
report,
Glover.
Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
You beat me to it, Commissioner Sadowski.
Just a quick heads up that the Grove Foundation annual golf outing will be on Saturday, September 7th at Belmont Golf Club, so be on the lookout for those flyers soon. And that is it. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Commissioner Tully.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Jose. First of all, I want to thank everyone who came out for a terrific Independence Day parade again. Everyone had a good time. The weather cooperated. Great turnout, and just for the record, I think this may be the first time in how long we've been keeping records. We might have to ask this guy back here. We did not run out of candy. Although I think the people in the Model Ts might have been a little upset with us.
I'm just glad we didn't get run over.
We were going a little slow, so it's a good thing they were Model Ts. But no, it was great to see everyone along the parade route, and thanks to all our police and fire that helped make the whole event very, very safe and well organized. There's Doug. Thank you very much, Doug, for everything you did, and really appreciated our parade marshal this year. Second item is, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't point out that there are only 352 days left until Rotary Grove Fest. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilmartin.
No report, Mayor Pro Tem. Thank you.
I'd just like to echo the thanks to everyone on staff for their help with the Independence Day Parade, And I'd like to thank Commissioner Tully for coordinating all of the candy purchases and making sure that we did not run out. In fact, I know at least a couple of kids that ended up walking away with way too much sugar after the parade.
Was their last name Jose?
A couple of them do have the last name Jose, yes.
Well, if you need a good supplier for pixie sticks, let me know.
I know at least one 10-year-old that's going to stop by. That brings us to the new business item, which was actually put forth by Mayor Barnett, but in his absence, I'll give it a quick intro. The request is to pull together documentation thus far with regard to combining the ZBA and the Plan Commission, and to consider combining them into one board or commission. By way of background, in many communities, they actually are one board or one commission. The Zoning Board of Appeals has seen a dramatic decrease in its workload over the last few years, largely due to some changes we've made to our zoning code. And there are some, in addition to that, sort of making sure that we don't have residents on a board that doesn't function a whole lot, and some of the frustration that comes along with that, which we've seen in other contexts. It does provide a bit more efficiency and effectiveness with regard to having a holistic view of our zoning code and its application when considering either an item for a rezoning or an appeal that might come before them. So with that as an intro, I would appreciate a motion to put the item on the floor and start additional debate.
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to consider combining the Plan Commission and Zoning Board of Appeals into one board or commission.
Second.
Any comments from members of the council? Commissioner Tully.
Sure, thanks. And I appreciate this new business item because in order for us to ask for staff to invest the time necessary to fully vet this concept, we have to go down this route, which is have a new business item, have staff work on it. We don't have any of the information yet, but we are voting to be able to invest the time of our staff to provide some information and background on this topic so that we can make an informed decision. It also provides an opportunity for public input so that we can make an informed decision. By way of history, when was it? Village Attorney Petrarca, was
1998?
Was it 1998? I thought we still had one until...
Oh, no, the combining of the other board was about 2002, I think.
I was going to say 2003, so I'm glad I checked with you. So once upon a time in a galaxy far, far away, we had a zoning commission, a zoning board of appeals, and a plan commission. And back in the early 2000s, there was a similar conversation of what we're having right here, which was, the zoning commission really isn't doing much. They're not meeting much. Can we combine them with the zoning board of appeals? And that was done, and that worked very effectively. So now here we are many years later having a similar conversation. A lot of it has to do with just changes in the things that come before the boards. Some of it has to do with things that used to come to the village council that are now dealt with appropriately by staff. Just a number of things have changed. So I'm certainly open to looking into it if it makes sense, but obviously want to get more information, as I'm sure everybody does. Want to hear more about it from the public. I want to hear more about it from the boards themselves, because there may be some members of the Zoning Board of Appeals that may have a different view, and I think we all like to hear that. But at least on its face, it seems to make sense to consider. And ultimately, the goal is to drive efficiency for both our staff, which benefits the community, but more importantly, benefits those that come before these land use boards, which are statutory boards that have to exist, or at least the ZBA has to exist by statute, or is just the Plan Commission?
The Plan Commission.
The Plan Commission, thank you. The Plan Commission has to exist by statute. The ZBA is our local entity, but it has served a purpose and served it well for many, many years. The question is, can we be more efficient so as to benefit those who come before the land use boards seeking some sort of relief or some sort of approval? So I just wanted to add that little bit of history because I've actually done this before. That doesn't mean it necessarily makes sense this time, but I think it's important for us to get some more information, talk about it, hear what the boards have to say. This certainly is not a urgent issue, but I think it's something worth looking into if we can continue to streamline and increase efficiency. So that's all I'll say at this point in time.
If I could build on what Commissioner Tully just said, process-wise, sometimes new business can be a little hard to follow, so we'll just walk through. If there's a yes vote on this tonight, it simply authorizes staff to take the next steps in the process. That next step would likely be a public hearing before the Plan Commission with the purpose of getting input from the public on these ideas that would be more developed in the form of a draft ordinance. So you'd have a venue just for public comment there. Also, the opportunity for the Plan Commission itself to weigh in and give a recommendation to council. That would likely take place in August, if the vote takes place here tonight. And then it would come back to the council likely in September, where the council could take more public input and then ultimately make a decision on those ordinances.
Thanks. Just two things to wrap up. So number one, I'm in favor of exploring it. And number two, I think one of the things that was very helpful way back in 2002 was to sort of see how the process would change. So for applicants now versus what applicants would go through under the combined structure, I think that was very helpful to sort of see that in terms of what's required and the timing. I know some of it's outside of our control, but to see what that impact would be externally for those that come to the land use boards as applicants would be, I think, helpful to see. So that's all I have at this point. Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem.
Thank you. Commissioner Sadowski, if you could.
I echo all of Commissioner Tully's concerns and thoughts. I agree. I would like to see kind of how this would change process. I'm also curious, so, we would be able to put this in front of Plan Commission, because ultimately it sounds more like they would be absorbing it since the ZBA is not quite as active. Would we also have the opportunity to hear anything from the ZBA, even if it's just with staff, or would they have a meeting, just so that we know, in addition to all of the other stakeholders that were already mentioned, we also have to consider the volunteer residents on these boards as well. And I'm sure there's probably some frustration of folks who dedicate their time and say, I'm going to hold this, X day of the month every month, and then have it routinely be canceled. That is probably also not a positive experience for residents. So it would just be good to hear kind of all of those pieces from both boards to see if this is the most effective way to move forward and the best use of staff, volunteer residents, and any of the businesses that might come forward, their time as well. So, but I am interested in looking at this. I know I've done a little bit of just introductory research after speaking with Mayor Barnett one-on-one. And yeah, it does seem like there's a good amount of municipalities around here that have done this, and given our efficiencies that we put forward with our zoning process, it does make sense to look into this now. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Commissioner Davenport.
So I'll say that this idea is actually very appealing to me. Got me. Yeah. If we think about why do we have a zoning board of appeals in the first place, right? So the Plan Commission is the group that gives us recommendations on zoning issues. They're in it all the time. They're looking at it all the time. And if you had a Plan Commission that was getting bogged down by appeals, it would make a lot of sense to spin off a small group just to handle that, right? But since we don't have that workload, it doesn't make sense to me to have this additional standing committee. And in fact, I think the adjudication of whether or not something should be enforced or not enforced, or variance granted or something, is probably better suited to the Plan Commission, because they're constantly in, looking at zoning and dealing with these issues. So I also applaud the idea of getting rid of a little more bureaucracy and streamlining a process, hopefully, and we're going to hear about that, I hope, in the review of this. Maybe it makes things a little more effective and simpler. So I know we have appointments coming up later this year, so I would love to see this be something that we resolve before those annual appointments happen, so that we can decide, whether or not I would hate to staff a zoning board of appeals and then say, sorry, we don't need you. So from a timing standpoint, while there's necessarily no urgency, I think there's functionally here there is a little bit. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Gilmore.
Yeah, thank you. So just one first point of clarity. Once the Plan Commission has had their public meeting and input. The report that would come back, or what would be presented back to the council, would that be a recommendation from staff based on that? Or would that simply be the pluses and minuses, and then we decide? How would that typically?
It would be both. It would be an explanation of the likely consequences of the action combined with the recommendation from staff. In most cases, we do make a recommendation. And it would also have the benefit of the public record and the recommendation from the Plan Commission itself.
And then
And draft ordinances, as I was telling you,
Got it.
in detail.
And then, secondly, removing the zoning board of appeal, which we obviously would talk about, assuming this gets moved forward, would then likely create another body that the appeals would come to. Safe to assume?
It would be the body that's created.
Plan Commission.
So the Plan Commission, who would be making decisions, would then make the decisions on the appeals as well?
Yeah, so the idea, I think, if you vote yes, I have a feeling the draft ordinance would say all of the functions of the current zoning board of appeals plus all of the functions of the current Plan Commission would be under one advisory board and commission.
I think that's the intent of Mayor Barnett's proposal.
Okay. So, having not discussed it with any of you yet, I have a concern with that. But I would be interested to see what that might look like. The idea that a body is its own appeals is concerning. Am I understanding that correctly? No. Okay, so maybe then help me understand that.
The appeal currently
Yep,
would go to the zoning board of appeals.
yes.
Instead of going to the zoning board of appeals, it will now go to the the
Okay.
new board, whatever we.
But these are
choose.
not decisions that the.
No,
I
no,
see.
no, they
Okay.
are not.
I misunderstood that, thank you.
We're the ultimate appellate court.
I look forward to discussing this, thank you. Appreciate that clarification. That's it.
Okay. Commissioner Glover?
Thank you. Yeah, I think for all the reasons that my colleagues have mentioned, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer to have staff further look into this, out of respect for like our volunteers' time and their schedules. Like you mentioned, like it doesn't make sense to have somebody waiting around for a meeting when there's not going to be one. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense just to combine them if the staff deems it, feasible to explore it. So I look forward to supporting that.
Very good.
Just one quick point of clarity for the public. Would you mind just kind of explaining the difference between, what the Plan Commission would be seeing and that it wouldn't be the same thing they've already seen coming back as an appeal? Would somebody mind kind of going through that?
It's an appeal of a staff decision.
Correct.
It's not an
Yes.
appeal of a Plan
Yes.
Commission decision.
And that's what I, want to
then-
make sure that folks understand
That's
is
correct.
that it's not a decision being made in a plan decision that's now
Correct.
being appealed.
And then there's a higher court beyond that.
Yes.
Yes.
Which is us.
Yes.
That was basically it, yes.
All right. I just want to make sure everybody kind of out there recognize that.
For my part, I agree with all the efficiency arguments and ideas that have been put forward. I think getting additional information on this and getting the Plan Commission's input and staff's input, in addition to seeing the language of a proposed ordinance, all makes sense. While nothing is urgent, I think you're correct in that. I think it is timely for reasons that Commissioner Davenport mentioned. Because the appointment process for boards and commissions typically takes place in or around August. Sometimes it takes a little longer than other times. But in addition to that, we have a fair amount of work in terms of the comprehensive plan, the bike and ped plan, et cetera, that's going to go through the Plan Commission pretty soon. So if its composition will be changing and its workload will be changing, it will be helpful to know that so that we can make sure that they've got a full complement as we move forward. Any public comment on the
Mayor
new business?
Personnel,
Yes.
just to speak to that, I respect the fact, I just want to address Commissioner Devon, and I realize we're now getting into the merits of this, but in terms of timing, I respect Commissioner Davenport's sensitivity to somebody getting appointed for the first time to the Zoning Board of Appeals, and then 6 months later it being eliminated. But we can handle that in a number of different ways. I mean, because number one, it's no secret that we're talking about this right now, but I think it's something we can communicate to any new appointees, because we'd only be talking about new appointees. And we could either have a shorter term, or we could simply communicate to them are you okay with coming on board, understanding that we're currently communicating this? So when I say there's no sense of urgency, there is no sense of urgency in the sense that there's no compelling reason this has to be done by the end of the year because state law changes or something like that.
Yeah, true.
I think we could handle the communication with volunteers appropriately so that they fully knew what to expect and wouldn't feel miffed if something were to change. And furthermore, your point, Mayor Pro Tem, I think is spot on. If there's going to be a lot of stuff going on with the other land use things that we're doing, I would be a little hesitant to start combining boards and changing things that quickly. I would rather, let's talk about this, let's investigate it, let's make sure that the boards are able to handle the work they have before them. I mean, if it truly is that the ZBA is doing nothing, okay, so be it, but then now I guess it really would mean nothing. But I'm just simply saying that I think that it's more important to take the time to do it and analyze it, and we can communicate with volunteers appropriately and just simply let them know this may happen. And if you're cool with being on as a new appointee, if you're cool with being on the commission that you may not outlast you, I think that can be managed effectively. That's all I was getting at. I mean, I want to be sensitive to that concern, but I'm also thinking of, especially with land use boards and the expectations of the public and the expectations of people that perhaps come before land use boards more often than we do, maybe present company accepted, that in just my opinion, it's not urgent. I think we can handle those other issues in different ways and just make sure that it's done at the appropriate pace, that's all.
Very good.
One last.
Please.
Do we have any openings right now on ZBA, or is ZBA fully staffed up?
I think we have openings on both boards, but we'll double check.
Okay. Yeah, and then just in terms of new appointees, usually takes a little time to get ramped up and kind of get used to a process, and with how infrequently the ZBA has been meeting. So just a little counterpoint. If we were to appoint somebody, it's possible that they'd end up having one meeting with never having experience being part of the group before to make some sort of judgment and then see you later. So I hear what you're saying, but
you go into it eyes wide open.
Yes, yeah. Well, so hopefully this is something that we can get some quick feedback on, and it's not too difficult of a process. It would be ideal if we could have this done before August, but I understand if we can't. Thank you.
Public comment.
Most of my questions, at least have been preliminarily answered, so I thank you. But in appreciation of Commissioner Sadowski-Fugit's remarks about the volunteers and other, and the participants, I'm wondering if a combined board would be increased in number to allow more participation by village residents that is an important part of this, and the opportunities to be a part of the process at that level among all of the things that you do is important and should be the opportunities should be spread as wide as possible. So if you're going to put two boards together, maybe increase the size so that more people can participate and share the workload. So that's my immediate thought. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick thought. When I was sitting back there, I in no way want to minimize what it is that you do for the community. However, may I suggest a time clock in the next village hall so that when people are talking, they're not cut off midstream from their thought and try to get back on track. So my suggestion is a time clock behind the council.
I tend to keep track of it here. Thanks.
No, just so we can see.
Sure.
Yep.
Good evening. Eileen Briner. I think this was addressed, but I couldn't hear quite. If you combine the Board of Appeals with the Planning Commission, where do you go with your appeal?
The Plan Commission.
You go back to the same people.
Well, no, you would be, as Commissioner Tully pointed out, and staff as well, the appeal is from a decision made by staff. So you're not going in a circle. So it's a
Okay,
staff
so you
determination.
would present
appeal
it to the
ZBA.
staff, and you would appeal to the planning commission, which would be the combined board.
It basically would be no different, because right now, if a staff makes a decision, the appeal is taken to the ZBA. If this happens, staff makes a decision, the appeal now goes to the plan commission. So no one is appealing their own,
When
no one is hearing
you're
their
an
own.
acronym, you're saying the ZBA, the zoning board? Because
appeals,
the-
yes.
Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, because those letters aren't coming through, and I'm like, what's this
Oh,
acronym?
sorry, Zoning Board of Appeals.
Yeah, so you're saying ZBA. It sounded like DVA, and I kept trying to figure out what the DVA was.
Sorry for the waited line a long time to get, no.
Yeah, got it. So there would be, the commission would then be the appeal board.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay, great, thank you for that clarification.
Any other thoughts from the public? I'll bring it back one last time. Any other thoughts from the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.
Mayor Pro Tem Jose?
Aye. That matter passes unanimously. That ends council member reports and brings us to the manager's report, which I believe we will handle next door.
Correct.
So if you'll give us a few minutes, we're going to make the transition over there. Everybody's welcome to join us, including you watching at home, and we hope you'll stick with us. Thanks very much.
Is it the train?
And they're flavored.
Sounds like deep bass. Yeah. Someone's car's parked outside.
All right, we are reconvened in the committee room to talk about the existing conditions memoranda that we started down the road of at our last meeting. We had a pretty detailed discussion with regard to the existing conditions, kind of village-wide, but we did not quite get past a kind of a quick overview with regard to the bike and ped plan and downtown and Fairview, and that's what we're here to do tonight. I'll turn it over to Manager.
And Josh Kuntz, practice lead from Housing Levine, will actually lead us through that discussion that you introduced. I wanted to take an opportunity to address a comment we heard from the public earlier tonight about how do you follow where we are on these 4 big projects that go together in guiding DG, and how do you participate? And so staff anticipated this question, and what we came up with is this graphic that is designed to be very easy to use and understand. So I'll just walk through it for a second here. It's got the 4 major projects, the update to the comprehensive plan, the creation of a bike and ped plan, the downtown and Fairview focus area streetscapes, and then the environmental sustainability plan. In each of those, you can follow along each of the components of those projects against the calendar that runs on the top here. So I'll just walk you through one as an example. Updating the comprehensive plan. Right here, we are in July. We're on existing conditions is what that says. After they finish up existing conditions, we'll go to a community visioning session, which will take place during the balance of July through August and into September. And these colored dots here recommend, the orangish ones are when the village council will talk about that topic. The yellow dot shows when the advisory board or commission that's working on that will discuss it. So just following that along, we'll go from existing conditions to visioning through September. Then they'll work on focus area plan development. Those are specific areas within our village that we'll tackle in some detail. That'll be a 3-month process culminating in December. From there, it will go to preliminary plans and policies in January and February, and then a draft comprehensive plan in March and April, and then a final draft in May and June. So I just wanted to take the time to show everybody how to read those, what they mean. This will be presented on each and every time we put a document out there or we have a discussion. The other thing I wanted to point out is there's been a question about when will the council see, when will the public see draft ideas for what the streetscapes plan might look like? When will we see it? What's in store? What are the options for council and outdoor dining in downtown? That is targeted for September. That's how you would read that. In downtown and Fairview streetscapes plan prototypes would be publicly presented. First 2 of the HPDRB, the Advisory Board, Historic Preservation and Design Review Board, and then on to the Village Council in September. So, appreciate the indulgence there to walk through. I think it helps everybody understand where we're at. This is in this week's presentation and the materials. Take a look at it if you're interested. And with that, I'll hand it over to Josh Kuntz to get back on track with the existing conditions memos. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, thanks for having us again. I'm here tonight with Kahi, who's been working on the project but has not attended one of these meetings before. So
this one will be better then.
Welcome. Everything can always be better. The only thing I would add to this is that anytime there's a public-facing big event or upcoming thing, we will have it on the project website. So the next upcoming thing, the visioning workshops and the pop-ups, those are always going to be on the project website. And if we ever need more detail about any of this, we also can always provide that in terms of what's next. We're happy to do that, and we want to be as public and open about what we're doing as possible. So
This seems like a good point maybe to advertise the upcoming events, right? There's 3?
for sure, there's going to be an evening workshop, Downers Grove South on July 22nd. That's going to be at 6:30. Second workshop is going to be in the afternoon at 2 p.m. at Downers Grove Civic Center, here at the Civic Center on the 25th. And then the third one will be that same evening of the 25th at 6:30 at the Rec Center. And after we get through the existing conditions discussion tonight, I'll give you just a short preview of not the whole workshop, but the core exercise that we're going to be doing with the community at each one of those different workshops. Just tell you a little bit about what those are. It's one of my favorite parts of the planning process, so it'll be fun. People will enjoy it for sure. Okay, we ended last time with all of us just kind of sitting around and having a really good discussion about the existing conditions memorandum. I want to get back to that conversation in just a minute. I want to also, before we get started, I do want to come back to outreach. We did get some updates from All Together. Some of them pertain directly to the comments we had last time, and All Together will be giving us a more detailed update probably in August, like a deeper dive into all the outreach that's been accomplished, because by the time we get to our next August check-in with you all, we will have done the visioning workshops. One of the sections of pop-ups will have been wrapped, so they will be able to kind of dive deep into everything that's been done. But basically, we had some of these numbers in here last time. One that's changed is another 24,000 Inside DG mailings have gone out. So that's good. We'll probably see some upticks in some of this stuff. I do need to, unfortunately, make a correction to website views. I took a look. I think that might be what we're trending towards for a full year. But our target for website views was 5,000 to 7,000 over a year. We are actually at 65, 64 currently. So we are well past our target for a full year, and we're trending toward 16 to 18,000.
But how many of those unique views are Janet? That's what I want to know.
We're not. We are tracking views, but not IPs, so we have no way to know something like that. So that's just I meant to change that number, but that's just a correction. In some of the other categories, the metrics that we put together at the beginning of the project, 12 public events held. We're at 4. We're going to be have an additional 5 across the pop-ups and visioning workshops next month. So we're well on track to meet that metric. People who've participated in a stakeholder group, we were at 65 was our target. We've had 76 participants across the planning projects, across all of the plans. We're about halfway at our goal for postcards. So there's an opportunity perhaps to send additional postcards. Community kickoff, we had a target of 100. We're at 200 plus. DIY kits, that's lower than we aim to have 20 distributed. We're at 5. So that is lower, but the overall metrics for participation are much higher, and I'll get into the rest of those in a minute. Across the different presentations and open house events and other activities that the different teams have done, we've counted 250 plus people. That goes back to mostly to that community kickoff event. And then the one that I really wanted to focus on Surveys, we've greatly surpassed our response group, and so with 1,700, our goal was about 1,000, so 1,700 across the projects. And we did ask all together to take a look at some of the demographics. It was something that came up last time. I don't have that in a slide to show you, and I think Marisa will show you next month, but we are relatively close to in line with the village's demographics compared to people who did answer the demographic profile question on the survey. So we're doing pretty good, and altogether it does feel that we probably will be able to close some of the gaps based on some of these pop-ups and the youth outreach that we're going to do. So there's a few that are low, but several that are higher than expected is the main takeaway, and we're seeing, I mean, phenomenal outreach participation. I think we're going to be pleased with the visioning workshops and hope to have a really good turnout. And I will come back to that at the end of this discussion. So, and here's some photos of the different pop-up events. Unfortunately, Tuesday night concerts, as I think most of you probably know, was postponed tonight due to the weather, so we'll reschedule that with All Together. But as you can see, people have been enjoying these activities, and All Together is just doing a great job getting out into the community and talking to people. So stay tuned for a deeper dive from the pros than I can give you tonight. It should be fun next month to hear it from Marisa on this stuff. So getting back to existing conditions, we can take comments on the comp plan, but we're going to focus mostly on the bike ped and the streetscapes existing conditions. I do want to touch back on this. Just again, we're talking about a baseline report. I called it the book report on the community before we get into things like visioning, goals, key recommendations. Does House of Levine and the other subs, do we kind of have our heads on straight, a good understanding of the community before we start actually making planning recommendations? Do these documents represent a good understanding of the baseline? I think we were getting there last night, or last time we were here, but we did want to get some additional feedback for these two documents. So acknowledging, of course, that obviously Baxter and Woodman and HDG are not here tonight, but between PE and I, we will facilitate the discussion, get the same kind of conversation going, and take good notes on anything that you all have to say, and we'll have our regular meetings with the sub-teams and make sure that they get these things updated. The only other note before we get into discussion on these is that we did receive a list from staff of the key updates based on the last conversation. Our team has already evaluated all the feedback from last time across all the documents, confirmed either that some of the data points were accurate or already made the changes that were requested. So after tonight, we should have good marching orders to finalize these documents and move into that visioning phase in 2 weeks. So I'm not going to do the full overview like Aaron and Tim were doing last time, but again, we'll start with bike ped, a baseline of transportation information. This is the organization. Looks back at the previous planning documents, thoroughfare assessment, interaction between land use and public transportation, the existing facilities review, and an overview of the recommendations of the 2013 plan. So just to focus on some of this is the final section of these reports, as you know, some of the key issues and opportunities that Baxter and Woodman team identified in their initial analysis. So some of the biggest issues, limited rights of way, and what they mean by that is that the village is built out, as we know, the rights of way are established, and to put more things into a street, more facilities, bike lanes, sidewalks, to make it more bike and pedestrian friendly, that space has got to come from somewhere. So that's an issue. When we have the established right of way and we want to retrofit them, that could be a limitation. Significant major thoroughfare crossings. There are some major arterials in the community: Highland Avenue, Belmont, Ogden, and these can cause some issues when people are trying to cross. Some of them are under IDOT jurisdiction, and we all know that a state entity like IDOT, they're concerned with moving people through, not with people getting across primarily. So that is an issue that would need to be overcome. Relatively speaking, a lack of bicycle-only facilities, and this really goes hand in hand with that limited right-of-way. Some of your existing streets were not planned for bike and ped the same way that we would if we were designing the street grid today. Opportunities, there is still, despite some of these limitations, there is an opportunity to add in protected bike lanes and off-street facilities and be strategic about where they might go and how we might retrofit some of these existing facilities or find some creative ways to make some new connections. There's an opportunity to increase the safety at crosswalks, or at the very minimum demand in your planning documents that as state projects come through that you see more safety even on state routes. The village can use these documents to have a voice at the table when these projects come forth. And then the kind of no community is an island key takeaway. There's opportunities to connect to regional assets that are even outside of Downers Grove, to community assets that aren't just within the village. So I guess with that, I want to open the conversation and turn it over to you all and just see, we'll talk a little bit about the bike ped ECM, and we'll be taking notes, and anything that I'm not able to answer that's either very bike ped technical or something that we need to take back to the Baxter and Woodman team, we absolutely will do that.
Thank you. So, like usual, we'll go around the horn. Who wants to kick it off?
All right. I kind of just have a series of takeaways or things that I feel like I would like us to just explore a little bit more. One of the first things that struck me is that we really do lack a lot of policy standards and definitions for the bike and ped regulations, kind of in that chart on which page was that? It was an early one.
With the check marks and the yellow
yeah, we really were lacking quite a bit, the regulatory environment on page 9 of the document. And I know a lot of that is because we haven't done this work in a long time, and we haven't seen a huge need from the community or a push from residents to do this. But I think we are starting to see more and more waves of, concerns, whether it be motorized bikes and scooters, or one that's actually come up quite a bit from both people who are bicyclists and drivers is the lack of education around hand signals with bicyclists and really understanding what those mean and how to share the road. It's funny because one thing that I took away from this was that Sharrow seemed to be kind of useless, and now I'm really regretting the decision that we made on Prairie Avenue. But that being said, at least that was my takeaway. It seems like they're not as an effective way to have protected, safe bike routes, especially if we're not doing this education. So I think that's one area where we could improve, is just from a public education standpoint. Another thing that is near and dear to my heart is a lot of the ADA issues that we have. And this is where I think we're also going to see some overlap with that streetscape plan, is I have concerns with ADA with regard to kind of the streetscape and the outdoor dining. I'm going to go off on a fun tangent because I can, but I have a friend who has a handicap permit, who lives in a suburb of Ohio who I grew up with, and has been fighting his municipality about ADA regulations, having handicap spaces in parking lots, and has been asking me, as somebody that I grew up with, asking me about, well, how do you guys operate? How do you do this? And he actually came to visit because, as we all know, with the degrees of separation of Downers Grove, his cousin moved here and lives in Downers Grove.
Wow.
And so I've gotten to see him a couple times. So he's gotten to see Downers Grove, actually stayed with his cousin at one point, and was impressed with kind of at least the thoughtfulness that he sees from especially our newer developments. And that is an incredibly meaningful thing for somebody who really does need the space. So one thing that you do notice though in here is, and it's not unique to Downers Grove, this was the DuPage County assessment on, where we lack ADA compliance. I know that we are working very heavily on that in the village. I've heard from neighbors how much they appreciate the new signals for those who are visually impaired, and it's a lot of work, but that's something that I really want to make sure we always have a heavy emphasis on is that ADA, the accessibility factor of it. I know that's one of the reasons why, for example, in McCollum Park, they used asphalt. It is just better from that compliance perspective. So just something that I just want all of us to keep in mind, even beyond just biking, is just safety of folks who might either be walking or crossing streets or interacting with some of these kind of points of interest in the village. And then the other big piece is that we do still have a lot of unprotected intersections. I know that we don't have as much control over, say, 55th or 63rd. There's a lot of competing agencies, but it would be nice to see in a plan that we put forward to have, whether it be pedestrian islands or something in some of those wider roads, because it can be incredibly intimidating, and I know that we've had some issues and some serious accidents on those routes, and it might at least kind of make folks recognize that there is still an opportunity that pedestrians or folks on bicycles can pass. Beyond that, my ideal scenario, which I know Commissioner Davenport has spoken about at length, is having protected bike paths that are not necessarily on streets, especially given the limitations that we have. Obviously, this is not something that we can do in the next 5 years. This is something that's would be a decades down the road, but it would be nice to see a little bit more connectivity. When you compare us to our neighbors, and you can see that in this, we have no long connected trails. We don't have connectivity between, say, north and south. And I think those are things that we really need to seriously think about. Is it realistic that we can retrofit some of these, or do we need to start thinking about where we might have some right-of-ways where we can try to make some connections in those bike paths? So those were some of the initial thoughts that I had, and hopefully it'll stem more conversation.
Thank you.
Okay, so probably the easiest thing for me to do will be just to kind of walk through the document real quick and highlight the things that I picked out. So I'll just reference page numbers. So if we look at page 9, right, the regulatory environment, we've had one or two residents step forward with comments about golf carts before. I'm just wondering how that fits into this. It's one of those sort of kind of where do they fall and how do we regulate and all that, and so that's an issue for some folks. On page 11, so the pedestrian first policy, as stated there, I think it's more than just what's been stated there. I'm guessing Commissioner Gilmartin might have a few things to say about this too, but for me, it's also about thinking how any given project, policy, regulation impacts pedestrians, right? So I saw this as a little further reach than what was stated here. And then under bicycle-friendly community or village designations, we list Tree City USA. The village is a Tree City USA community. Bicycle-friendly community. The village is not a designated bicycle-friendly community. So, I'm wondering, what else are we not? Are there other organizations, other? If we're going to list the things that we're not, then, is there something more? I don't know. It just, to me, it seemed a little, something there didn't make a whole lot of sense to me. On page 12, complete streets, down at DuPage County, complete streets. So the second paragraph there, starting with, notably, while the county has a complete streets policy, Downers Grove has not passed a complete streets ordinance or plan. So I really think we should strike that, notably, while the county has a complete streets policy. I think it's just enough to say that we don't have one. I don't know that, by saying that, I think it's conveying a negative that maybe we do want to convey, I don't know, but I'm not, this is an existing conditions analysis, right? So that's how kind of I took that. Under the trail count program, I wanted to point out, it says, to date, DuPage County has not placed any trail counters within Downers Grove. And, I'm wondering, like, why would they and where would they even do it? I mean, you heard the comments just previous from Leslie here. Looking at the previous, so I'm on page 14. Let's see, let me see here. Residents of Downers, so upper right-hand corner of this graphic, residents of Downers Grove and the Chicagoland region can bike to the Mississippi River in Rockford on the Illinois and Michigan Canal Trail and the Prairie Path Trail. And I'm wondering, well, how we're not connected. How are we going to get there? I don't know. I don't think that we can really easily right now do those things, and that's part of the goal of what we're trying to do here, is to be able to do that. The bottom right graphic, has under development plans in dark blue, and then the outline of Downers Grove in black. And I think for somebody just reading this, it might be a little hard to differentiate that. Page 14, bottom right-hand corner. Page 15, when we're listing DuPage County plans, we've got the DuPage County Regional Bikeway Plan, the DuPage County Mobility Plan, DuPage Trails Plan. But in looking at this, I'm wondering if there's something we're missing here from the Forest Preserve. Is the Forest Preserve of DuPage County put together any plans that we should be listing here? And we certainly have Forest Preserve property here in Downers Grove. And so on page 16, next page, just wanted to point out, I appreciated this emphasis. Go back to the 2013 plans public engagement process, found that residents are most interested in dedicated bicycle facilities, along with safer intersections and crossings. So, that's something I think we're hearing echoed now as well. The key takeaways. So under planning efforts, the last sentence, Downers Grove currently has multiple neighborhood level and village-wide mobility plans. I would say that, we have incomplete neighborhood level and village-wide mobility plans. I'm particularly looking at things like that traffic study and seeing that the neighborhood I live in hasn't been looked at yet. So we've got some work to do on that, and I think this statement ought to reflect something about that, since this is a key takeaway, right? And that much of the 2013 bike and ped plan remains unrealized. I think would be a key takeaway in all this as well. I think most people might agree with that, because that was certainly what we saw in the existing conditions stuff. And once again, we're talking about key takeaways, right? So, under policies, it mentioned, and this goes hand in hand with what I was asking before in terms of what are we not. The village does not have a complete streets ordinance, Vision Zero policy, or smart growth policy. And I went back looking through. I didn't see anything about a Vision Zero policy or a smart growth policy listed in the existing conditions report to this point. So I'm wondering what those things are. Maybe I missed it. I did have to do a quicker read on this than I wanted to, but I read it. So, and then another key takeaway, I would say, ought to be something about funding, because in this existing conditions report, there were several mentions to federal grants. Federal funding may be available through IDOT and CMAP initiatives, and that was mentioned prominently in the report, and I think that would be a key takeaway as well. On page 17, the boundary agreement. So this was interesting, and this may be more of a question to staff going forward. says Downers Grove has agreements with neighboring municipalities that dictates where Downers Grove, quote, has the legal right to plan thoroughfares, utility infrastructure, sidewalks, and trails in unincorporated areas. So I'd like to know more about that, because that
Real quick, under Illinois law, you have, municipalities have the ability to do plans within 1.5 miles of their boundaries, called extraterritorial jurisdiction. In dense urban areas like this, where municipalities tend to butt up to each other, or the distances between them are very small, it's very common for those municipalities to enter into boundary agreements that establish our planning area from their planning area. It's actually shown on our future land use maps. So you can go online, take a look, and in these unincorporated areas, like here's one right here that says Oak Brook Boundary Agreement, a little dashed line here.
I saw that.
So that's it in a nutshell. We do have boundary agreements with almost all of our surrounding municipalities, but I'm going to pause there and look to Stan and Enza to see if I missed anything or said anything wrong on those.
I think you're good.
So what's intriguing about this is just that, you know, that all of this work could lead to some new boundary agreement or some sort of adjustment to an existing one. So just, you know, so that's intriguing. All right. Now I'm on page 21. Where we're talking about daily traffic. Public-oriented facilities and places located along thoroughfares with the highest AADT. This is in the bottom right-hand corner. Is this information based on annual daily visits to those destinations, or what? How is this? What's the metric that?
ADT is a traffic counter, basically.
Right. So I understood thoroughfares operated by Downers Grove with the highest AADT, and we list number 1, Woodward Avenue, is listed. Okay. When I get to these things on the right, I'm asking if these entities, so number 1 was Downers Grove South High School on 63rd Street. Are we saying that out of every place in Downers Grove, we're counting more people going there than anywhere else, or coming from? I don't know how to read this.
So I don't think it was intended to be an origin destination study where we actually counted to and from there. I think it was pointing out, I should sort of Josh, sorry about that.
That's okay.
That when they're just noting, here are some major facilities that are located on streets with high ADT, there's probably some causal connection there, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think this is just saying, you know, here's the top 8 public facilities, places people are trying to get to that are along some of the most heavily traveled corridors in the community.
These are 8 things. You know, they're not necessarily in this order. I don't know. I was just looking for some clarification as to what this really meant.
Yeah, I took that as there's just a ton of people going by these 8 landmarks.
See,
I don't want to.
I don't want this to be interpreted. I want it
chicken
to.
and the egg, right?
Yeah.
Are there a lot of people in the street because of the facility,
Sure.
or there?
Sure, right,
There's
sure.
a lot of traffic.
Sure, but I don't. This should, you have 4 different people look at this and have 4 different understandings of what this means.
Yeah, we can clarify that with Baxter and Woodman. I'm digging way back into one of my earlier planning jobs, but I started out as a bike planner for the city of Chicago, and one of the things we would have to do when we would submit a proposal for an on-street facility to IDOT is justify it by saying, like, how many public facilities, how many parks, schools, daycares, and show, like, along the corridor, and that was one of the ways you could potentially convince IDOT that this road was deserved a bike lane.
Got it.
So that could be what they're starting to get at. We will take this back to Baxter and Woodman for clarification.
Terrific. Yeah, excellent. On the next page, so it would be 22, which is all just a map of the annual average daily traffic. There's some orange areas, orange roads, that also have like a red highlight along their edges. At least that's how it printed out on my map here. And I'm like, what is that? Like here. So I'm orange, and then here, so if I go north from 63rd Street along Fairview Avenue, when I get just north of 59th Street, there's a little section there that's got a little red line.
Yeah, I think it's actually kicking up a level in the number of cars in that segment.
All right, so, okay, but the legend has just orange and then red. So you're either orange or you're red.
Yeah, we'll double check, but I think that particular segment has a higher ADT in that stretch only than the other ones.
Cool.
Yep.
Just needs to say what it is.
Got it.
Because
Oh, I'm with
right
you,
now,
Mike.
once
Sorry.
again, I'm interpreting something, and
Yeah,
I want to
gotcha.
know, I want the correct information.
Legend.
Yeah, hey,
Sorry, Mike, I'm right.
you know, I do a lot of drawing and maps and things. Page 23, parking and right-of-way restrictions. So there was a statement in the first paragraph that streets within the downtown, comma, a location with higher parking demand, comma, only allows for 2-hour or 15-minute. So when we make that statement, a location with higher parking demand, I'm wondering, is it really a higher parking demand, or is it simply that we don't have, that we've got unmet parking, right? That's an area where we don't have enough parking. It's not that the demand there is necessarily higher than it might be in other places. It's just that it's not being met. It's a distinction, but
I'm not sure that I take I can't grant the premise, because our studies have shown that, you know, we do have available parking throughout the system on a daily
So-
basis throughout the day.
so here, so you're getting, you're
But
you're
we
one
might
step
need to
ahead of me,
refer
buddy.
back to.
But
All
yes.
right, I'll let you continue.
Yep, so I'm wondering what the basis for this statement is, and, you know, what we really mean by that statement. So, because I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, so, for
Sorry
what
for the
Commissioner Jose just mentioned. Also, let's see here. I wrote south of, okay, oh yeah, so, challenges, right? This whole paragraph, so the previous paragraph talked about parking and right-of-way restrictions, and then this whole challenges paragraph doesn't really say much about parking. So, I don't know if that's telling or not, but if you read the whole paragraph, the word parking doesn't even end, it doesn't come up. So there ought to be some sort of, you know, are these challenges, it seems like these are all challenges to right-of-way restrictions is where I was going, so. So also, it says, due to Downers Grove's mostly historic street grid. And I think that statement is true for the center, maybe the center third of Downers Grove. When you get south of 59th Street or north of Ogden, we really are not a historic standard street grid. We've got lots of subdivisions that have curvy sort of streets, and so to characterize the whole town that way doesn't seem to make sense to me. Let's see here. The rights of way are generally narrow when compared to, so the rights of way are generally narrow when compared to neighboring communities with newer streets, and near or at complete build-out with limited space for thoroughfare, sidewalk, or utility expansion. Yeah, I'm not sure why I underlined that. Sorry.
You need a key or a legend.
Yeah, I need a key or a legend from, thank you, Commissioner Tully. So I'll pass on that. So, on page 25, land use considerations, the very last sentence, where we talk about along major thoroughfares such as Belmont Road / Main Street, or 63rd Street and Central Fairview Avenue near the train stations. These are areas where multifamily housing, mostly apartments and townhouses, are clustered. And 63rd Street, I think you actually meant Maple Avenue. In fact, if you look at our zoning map of 63rd Street, you'll see that there actually is no multifamily zone along 63rd Street. There are single-family attached residential, but whereas along Maple, there are several examples of multifamily. So just a correction there. And under community nodes, downtown, Ogden Avenue, Butterfield Road, Esplanade. You know, I think if you look at 75th Street, 75th and Lamont Road, I mean, if all four corners there existed within Downers Grove, you'd absolutely would have had this here, right? So 2 of those corners are in Downers Grove, and so in conjunction with our neighbors there, you know, I know for us Southsiders, you know, I find myself down on 75th Street a lot for, as there's employment centers, shopping areas, entertainment venues. So that really, I think, I would make an argument that ought to be another community node at 75th and Lamont. Public transportation, this is nothing for the board, just kind of like a wow, right? So under the station statistics for Metro Rail service, 40% of people are walking to the Fairview train station. So just something to keep in mind with our Fairview focus work that we're doing there. And it did highlight that in the narrative that Belmont and Fairview have quite a bit, but 40% was surprising to me. So really interesting. On public transportation, the next page, we show discontinued bus routes. And I'm wondering what the relevance of that is and how far back do you go to show discontinued bus routes? Are these just recent discontinued bus routes, or are these,
Most are COVID related.
you know, so, well,
I think they're probably just worried if anybody's standing out there.
So in terms of, oh, God,
Sorry, that was a joke, Mike, sorry. My
I'm
bad.
in serious mode right
You
now,
are,
Chris.
my bad. I withdraw the comment.
So I just don't see the value of putting discontinued bus routes on this map. If once again, you'd have to say discontinued then bus route, if we want to have them on here, discontinued bus routes from the last
Yeah.
4 years or something.
Or explain why they're on.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Yeah.
I think it could be relevant
Or
because
some-
of COVID,
it could be a
because we
re-
lost a lot of bus routes due to COVID, so that might be a good thing to point out, are perhaps changes that have just come about
Right.
within the last
Right.
few years.
Or there was a reason why that bus route was there in the first place. Why?
Yeah.
I don't know, there wasn't any discussion about
That's what
it.
I mean.
They show up on this
Explain
map,
why it's there.
and then that's the only time we
Why is that
we talk about
relevant? I mean, it could be very relevant because somebody actually did a lot of planning once upon a
Right,
time
'cause
and
it-
decided that was a good route.
So
Yeah,
if-
I know in the comp plan, it talked a little bit about the pace routes that were removed because of COVID. So yes,
So-
having a little bit of that copied over here, I agree, would be a good idea.
I fully anticipated this discussion. That's my point, is that, it's just shown here and then
Yeah.
what?
Yeah.
Nothing, right? So, the graphic, I pointed this out last time so page 29, the graphic on page 29, or 29, the graphic on page 30, the idea that, so we're showing that trail along the south side of 75th Street. Bless you. And that anything along the south side of 75th Street is not in Downers Grove, and if we're included in the 11.6 miles of trails and parks, we shouldn't be, because it's not in Downers Grove. So, bicycle facility observations on sheet 31. So, interconnectivity. Since we're making these observations, I would add something that talks about, that not only bicycle routes are generally interconnected with limited occurrences of dead-end facilities. The Grant Street bicycle route has a missing segment near Main Street and Downers Grove North High School, and the route along Lacey Road ends north of Finley Road. I would also point out, that there is no connection to designated routes in the neighboring communities, right? So we've, kind of goes along with what I was talking about before, where we just, we're not looking at what's within a mile of our boundaries and saying, hey, there's probably something we ought to be looking there to get people there, because we're part of a bigger goal. Under safety, I would also add that most bike lanes are unprotected with no physical barrier. On page 32, state of the lanes. We talk about safety here again. Because existing bicycle lanes are unbuffered, unprotected, a cyclist may run into an opening car door along Warren Avenue and Prentice Drive's parallel parking, and I would say, or may easily get hit by automobile traffic. You know, I mean, there's not a lot of room there for bikes to move. So, I mean, those moving vehicles are just as much of a danger as somebody opening up a car door. Yeah, signage, bicycle lane signage is in place at the start and end of each segment of bicycle lane. I think we need to make a point that there's missing signage in between the starts and the end, right? So when we talk about, this is the state of our bicycle lanes, sure, we've got here's where you start and here you finish, but along the way, you might get lost a little bit if you've ever tried to follow that. I'm turning lots of pages. That should make everyone happy. So then, on the issues and opportunities, the last pages, 43 and 44. One, just an overarching comment. I would say, I would hope that all of these might be tweaked a little bit in response to what's heard tonight, not only from me but my fellow commissioners, right? And then specifically under opportunities, increasing, the last paragraph, increasing connectivity to destinations in the region. If we're going to, in the last sentence there, we mentioned the Prairie Path, which doesn't come anywhere close to Downers Grove. So I would throw in other things like Waterfall Glen then too, which is a popular destination for a lot of Downers Grove residents, including myself. And then under connections to, when we talk about connections to neighboring communities are limited, particularly connections to, and we mentioned Lisle, Westmont, and Lombard, but Woodridge should absolutely be listed here. Woodridge has an extensive trail system which connects very well to a lot of regional trails as well as trails in Lisle. And they're our neighbor. That's all for me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Chris?
Thanks. I'm just going to need a minute because I was following along page by page, and now I have to go back to my notes page by page.
So you're blaming me for the hold-up now?
No, I was thoroughly impressed with your thorough comments.
Okay.
Of which I agree with almost all of them. The discontinued bus route, I think, is an opportunity to demonstrate there may be a need somewhere. That's the way I read that. So I will similarly go through my notes here. I've just got to get. I'm very sorry. I did this all electronically, and okay. Whoops. Okay. First and foremost, I think on page 7 it talks about what we've added. I think Commissioner Davenport already pointed out. It's not much. Those numbers there on page 7 talk about adding 1.5 miles and all these trails, and to me, I think they're, by saying it's 6.5% increase, let's call it what it is. It's almost zero, and I don't think. I don't know if that was an attempt to sort of sweeten it, but I'm not sure. But kind of taking also a step back here, I think tied to the previous plan, the comprehensive plan that we talked about, were some of the opportunities there. One of the points on that one, which sort of leads into this, was that 41% of survey respondents identified pedestrian and bicycle trails as a weakness, indicating a clear need for improvement. So that was 41% this time around. The last time around, you noted how much interest there was in this connectivity. I think the idea that this is just a nice to have for the bike club is, we're well beyond that. So I feel like I want to make that point, because the interest in this is not just bikes for exercise, it's transportation, it's safety of transportation for many different groups using this. Walking, exactly, all of that, indeed. So I too looked at the regulatory environment. I had the same feeling of things that were somewhat lacking. I did think it was an interesting point that Downers Grove does have a couple of rules and ordinances, laws, whatever it may be, that regulate bicycle and when they're supposed to stop and not stop at an intersection. So that's different than DuPage County. And then also helmet requiring. So I will be using that for my 12-year-old son, the law. It does, though, indicate that maybe there is a little bit of a disconnect of sort of what we've decided, and I think that could add to confusion. Leslie, you talked about knowing hand signals and things like that. I think it's also drivers, whether they're expecting the cyclist to stop or not. I think that I've heard that a lot. And candidly, it is a little confusing if you were going by the letter of the law. So I think somewhat of a review of our own regulatory environment is probably something we should button up, as we've done with lots of other things in the past. To that point of sort of what the county's doing, one of the questions I had is, has there or will there be any study of what the county is planning or what they're doing that we can try to weave into what we're doing? So if they've got, clearly we've already discussed the thoroughfares that go through our town and sort of our, in some ways, lack of ability to move that or move things on that. But if the county is doing things, I would love to know, and maybe we should be understanding that as we make our own plans. I think one of the other things about sort of the major thoroughfares, I would love to understand, and this is kind of a reoccurring theme in some of my requests, but with this sort of north-south issue that, or we're sort of more north-south with limited thoroughfares. We've got a lot of thoroughfares east-west that are not under our control. So what other ways we're not the only municipality that has that. What are other ways that cities have worked around with through those challenges would be important to me. Again, going through this, there's discussion on the electric scooters. Right now in Downers Grove, they are not allowed to be used on sidewalks, but can be used on bike lanes, which we have almost none of. Again, I'll just write that down too. I think we need to elaborate on, or reevaluate, I should say, some of those things in the context of all this. I mentioned that already about the fact that you have to come to a complete stop. So the existing programs and initiatives, I think to Mike's point, he was talking about the funding that might be available. What I would be curious, obviously the same question, like what can we look to see how we can help pay for some of these changes that we make. But also, I think I want to understand if what the shift has been from the state and the county since our last plan, from the standpoint of how much more motivated are they for these types of improvements to safe, non-motorized transportation. We know, I think we talked a little bit about what's happening at Findlay and Ogden, and there's some requirements there that we have to put in these specific requirements based on, I think, the state. So I think understanding maybe what more, like what I guess my theory, what I'm trying to understand, or maybe my theory is that there's been a lot more movement towards this. And so how does that help us pay for it and enact on it, or ways that we can learn from others how they've done it with some of the same challenges we have. I think it was interesting when Mike mentioned the fact that we're not a bicycle-friendly community by designation of the American Bicyclists program. Oak Park is. And I cannot imagine Oak Park is any less landlocked, grid, congested, dense than we are as a town. So how do we look to them or others that have a similar, some of the grid system that we have to become more bike friendly? I think it is important to keep in, this is one place where maybe where you, Mike, you and I deviate. The county has a complete street policy. We do not have one. I think that is glaring. I've thought that for the 3 years I've been on the council. And I think that has always been something very, very important in order to get a lot of these things moving. So the idea that the county has put one in place, we have county roads running through us, we should look to that. And I think I will just stress again why I think that is a very important part of this plan. I also thought it was interesting about biking to the Mississippi River. I think by the measure here, we could bike to the Grand Canyon, which I'm not sure why that is, but I think they were maybe making the point that if we just branched out to some of those, I don't know. I did have a question about the sections that are missing on the southern DuPage regional trails. Maybe why. I'm not really sure why that is, why Downers isn't participating there. I already brought up 13 plan, public engagement process. Residents are most interested in dedicated bike facilities such as bike lanes. It's been many years of the same feeling. I talked about that. I think the bike-friendly plan could also be part of our environmental sustainability plan, but we can get to that. And I do think the regional connector, the fact that we have a north-south orientation, I am very much interested in seeing what we can do to connect the north and south parts of town. I think that is something that we've heard outside of the bike and ped plan, and what a way to start, or what a way to look to do that. So to me, I think that is more than just safety first, but I think also connecting the two parts of town that I feel often has a little bit of a border that feels hard to cross. This way would be a good way to do that. One other question, or maybe another question I had was, in the draft recommendations, do we have the ability to provide, or will we be analyzing things like street width and tree placement? Okay, so I don't know what kind of data we as a village have mapped out on our street grid and layout, but I think it would, you know, we saw some examples in here of like streets with on-street parking, streets without on-street parking. There was some mentioning about widths of connectors and minor and major collectors, excuse me, and sort of, I think, average widths of those, or what that, I guess that's just the question I have.
We have already, working with
Okay.
Houseville and the sub-consultants, addressed this issue. In fact, we had a discussion just the other day about when we get into the visioning sessions, to get more specific on these very issues and the types of potential trade-offs, so the council can understand
Yes.
quantitatively what they are, and also qualitatively, those participating in the visioning sessions, what do they want if it came down to have to prioritize
Yes,
those things?
yeah.
So yes, I think we can do that. We'll have to work with the consultant team to see how can we roll that.
Yeah, I think part of that for me is, I drive around town and I see a street that I think is wide, and I think, oh, I should I have a little map that I just make little markings on it, but I don't know really how wide it is and what,
And
you
some of them
know.
are deceptive based on surroundings.
Yes, exactly, curb, no curb, exactly, so,
We have a lot of that data.
Okay.
today, so we can get that back to where we.
okay.
I could speak to that just
Yeah,
for a
yeah.
second. And again, we will take this back to the pros, Baxter and Woodman, but average width is a major consideration. It goes back to that limited right-of-way
Mhm.
key issue, and it's something that, to reasonably recommend bike facilities, it's gonna have to be a consideration. Like, if this street may be, based on its average width, there may be some spots where it narrows, but maybe, A Street we could say this could support a bike lane outright, no problem. You don't have to change anything. Parking stays, sidewalk stays.
Yeah.
If you want one on this like key segment here, you might have to take out some
Yeah.
parking. And do we really want to do that? Is it worth it?
Yeah.
So that will, to some degree, that will have to be part of Baxter and Woodman's assessment
Sure.
as they prepare ultimately the map that shows where future bikeways should go.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm most interested in. Well, not most, I am very interested in to understand and like actual street widths as opposed to just like, well, this is a collector, so it's 28. No, it's actually 29.5, or, I don't know how, I don't know.
And the only other thing I would say to that is that there's a handy guidebook called the, oh man, I'm drawing a blank on it. It's one of my favorite technical manuals, though. I think it's the NACTO, National Association of Transportation. Anyway, it's a national organization, and they publish standards for what types of bike facilities are appropriate for different.
Yeah.
What you could fit based on.
Yeah, no, that I understand, and I've looked at a lot of that and what we need. I'm just saying, like, what's our existing, like, what is Dunham?
Yeah.
Like, that's one that was identified. Or Fairview, we know, last time it was said, let's put a dedicated bike lane almost all the way up to Ogden from 63rd, I think it was. And so that one is obvious to me. I'm more interested in what else we have, and I know things change as you come south to north or east to west, so I think you understand what I'm looking for. Okay.
Especially previous conversations that you built on
Yep.
this request, so we'll
Okay.
get into the actual location.
Part of my comment on the, that center third being the grid, and then.
Yeah.
It was recognizing that, in that, the north and south, the right-of-ways generally are much
Yeah.
wider, and it's really the right-of-ways that we're talking about,
Yeah.
not just the street width,
Right.
right? Because you've got that whole right-of-way.
Exactly.
So you could be taking a sidewalk out and replacing
Sure.
it with something that's wider, something, those possibilities exist. right?
Exactly right, exactly right. Yeah, I think it is also important to note some of the, and retain in here, the dead-end facilities on some of the bike routes, the signage being inconsistent, trail connections not being consistent. These are all very important things to note, that our application of some of this stuff has not been complete, to be nice. And, yeah, I think that's it. Mike took a lot of the good stuff and copied off my paper, so those are the kinds of things I'm interested in seeing, and, appreciate that.
Got it. Hey.
Oh, wait, sorry, I made some notes, actually. A couple more things. Is it possible, so we have a lot of bike routes, right? Not dedicated lanes. But are there cases where where you would implement stricter laws around, like penalties? So like on a designated bike route street, if you hit a cyclist or a pedestrian, that you could enforce stronger penalties. Just thinking of ways that we can incentivize carefulness. And I agreed with you on the pedestrian first. That was not enough. What you described was what more that I was thinking of, so thank you for that. That's it.
That's a lot to follow. Appreciate my colleagues' thoroughness. I guess I'll just piggyback on a couple things that had already been mentioned, especially in regards to the regulatory environment. So I've been blatantly breaking the law in front of my children. So I think there needs to be more education, because like when I'm on my bike, or even as a driver, I don't know when somebody's stopping or when they're turning. I don't think most people use signals even. Like, if they do, I don't always know exactly what they mean, because not everybody's on the same page all the time, and especially now that we have these electric scooters, electric bikes, maybe golf carts. But yeah, so there needs to be some kind of education as we start to move forward with some of these things that we're talking about. And then I also, one of the biggest things, I think we've all said it for many years, is, and everybody said it here, is the connectivity from south to the north side. I think it's pretty easy. Like, whenever I'm choosing my route, I always go either to Westmont, Clarendon Hills, Hinsdale area, because that's easy to get to. It's easy to get east and west. But north and south, I'm not going to go across 55th or 63rd. So it would be nice if we can start to figure out some ways to work with some of these other bodies and implement some type of system to get from north to south a lot easier, because I'd love to go to McCollum and connect to that trail. Yeah, just wanted to piggyback on some of that stuff. I definitely think it's important to increase the connectivity to the surrounding towns, like's been mentioned before. So I don't really have that much more to add to what you guys have already said.
Cool.
Pretty thorough. But yeah.
Very good. Martin?
Thanks. So first of all, it's really important to have a plan, because even for those agencies and jurisdictions that we don't have any control over, or even our neighbors, we know that if you have something in place when they start their designs and their plans, they're more likely to actually abide by them than if they already have a plan and then you show up and say, wait, I want to do that. Then they're going to say, oh, sorry, we're done, planning's finished. So that's super important. But to me, this all comes down to page 23 and page 37. So, why wasn't the 2013 plan implemented more than it has been? What are the pragmatic barriers that are not discussed in a lot of detail in this, and I think are probably the most important existing conditions that we need to expand upon? We know a lot of stuff wasn't done. Great. With all due respect, there's a lot of pages here telling you things that we kind of know. Why haven't things been done? Okay, right away, I got it. And that has a whole conversation, because that you either have to give something up or you have to add to something you have. So that's either changing the right of way to give up something that has been there for a long time likely, or it means acquiring more property. But it's got to be more than that. I mean, what are the other pragmatic barriers that we have faced? Yes. What are the
Just to build on this, because I want to try to connect for our whole team, consultant, everybody, following Chris's lines of like, hey, let's measure this and understand the sort of physical barriers. I want to understand your question, Martin. Is part of that question actually going back and looking at why was the vote on Fairview Road Diet? Like, are you looking at like legislative history? Like,
well, but
If it's not, that's where I'm going to go.
Well, yes, because there were reasons for it. So let's talk about what we did tonight, for example. There was interest in putting in curb and gutter in a street. And there was a detailed recitation by staff as to what that would mean. $3 million instead of $1 million. Having to regrade things, having to acquire private property, having to, all these things. So those are, to me, pragmatic obstacles or barriers. Not that they're insurmountable, but I think they have to be understood as part of the existing conditions.
There's some of the challenges.
Well, there's some, but not enough. Because to me, I don't want to get back to 2013 where we have this plan, and you can say whether it was good, bad, or different, doesn't matter. Why wasn't it implemented? Because I don't think there was any lack of interest. There were probably a lot of real pragmatic reasons why things weren't done, either because of right of way, or cost, or lack of cooperation, or no, whatever it was. And I'm not suggesting that we need to go back and digest every single issue of the last 20 years, okay, not 20 years, 11 years. But I think it's super important to include that as part of the existing conditions, because there were reasons why things weren't done. And I'm not saying that times haven't changed. I'm not saying that funding hasn't changed. I'm not saying that technology hasn't changed. I'm not saying that there might be different interest or demand because we're now post-COVID. A lot of things have changed. But I would really want to understand more than, okay, here's what was recommended, but it wasn't done. Okay. And then we have challenges with right-of-way. Okay. I mean, but we have challenges with right-of-way with a lot of things. With our water system, with our stormwater system, with our sidewalks, with our forestry, I mean, everything, those create issues. And I think that's important because to do this super right, it has to be feasible and implementable in a realistic way. Because I don't want a council to be sitting here in the next 11 years and looking at another chart like this. It didn't get done. So part of me, I think, for both us and the community, we need to better understand or have a greater discussion as part of the existing conditions. I think history is part of that existing condition. And so, yeah, a little bit, I think it is, Dave, why were decisions, if there were opportunities that weren't pursued, why? Because I don't think it was lack of political will or community interest. It may have been neighborhood opposition, it may have been cost.
Economics, 2013, you're just coming out of the Great Recession.
Right, could have been cost. I mean, tonight, I'm just saying, here's an example tonight where we had an issue where, yeah, we could have done something, but there were a number of reasons why it wasn't just practical. And I'm not suggesting that it won't happen next week, but you know what I mean. So to me, that's a very important part of existing conditions. And it goes back to your point, Chris, about why Oak Park did it. Why haven't we? I mean, why? They have different right-of-ways. They have more money. They have better grants. It's because they're in a different county. Some people park their hair on the other side of their head. I mean, whatever it is. I think that's important to know because, number one, it makes for good planning and recommendations because then we can have planning and recommendations that are actually feasible. And then we can have a better chart 11 years from now that shows a lot more green check marks. Is it the other jurisdictions, whether it's the county or the state, the feds, whoever, things have changed. I think that's important to point out. And maybe that gets a little bit more in opportunities, but I think understanding that something wasn't available 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years ago that is now, that's an existing condition to me. And I think that's also, going back to this issue about transparency and the community understanding what's going on and why. I think not only do we need to understand that very well, I think because we need to be able to articulate it, but I think the community needs to understand that too, because I suspect that there are going to be trade-offs. And that may be okay. But I think people need to understand that. They need to be able to come to grips with it and realize, yeah, I'm willing to make that trade-off. I can support that, and then I think that's another part of feasibility and successful implementation. So that was a long way of saying yes. I think the history here is important because candidly, I could use a refresher.
Because it might inform the way we go about this plan.
Well, absolutely.
For sure.
Absolutely. I mean, again, not to harp on it a third time, but we had a conversation tonight. Why aren't we doing this?
Why keep including something in a plan that just isn't feasible to be done?
Right. It's the old cartoon of you got a wall. You can go under it, you can go through it, you can go over it. Maybe last time we tried to go under it. Maybe this time we go over it. But you still have to understand the wall.
There'll be a good connection of what Chris was saying and what Martin's been here.
Yeah, it's really picking up on what Chris was saying, but in a different way. I think that and I know this is an existing conditions, and maybe that wasn't the focus of it, but I think an existing condition is what in this community, other than grids and part of the town and right-of-way limitations, what are the existing conditions that have prevented more of this from being implemented?
Mayor Pro Tem, you either get this little spot here or the whole
whiteboard.
I won't need the whole whiteboard, because I think a lot of what I have to say has already been said, and I'm actually going to pick up kind of where Martin left off. And I agree with a lot of what's been said tonight by pretty much everybody in the room. We do have to be sure that it's a plan that is implementable, and there are reasons why the 2013 plan has not been better implemented. But I think almost anything is implementable if we're willing to throw enough money at it. The question is, what are we willing to throw at it? And I think that's one key driver, and I think it is among the key drivers of why we haven't implemented more. I mean, what I took away from especially the first probably 10 pages or so of the report was that we've done a pretty good job when it came to the pedestrian part of the bike and ped plan. But the bike plan, really, that part of it languished. And yeah, the one area that I'll disagree with what Martin had to say, and it's only minor, I think there is an extent to which it is a lack of political will. We've had opportunities on Prairie, on 59th Street, on Fairmount. And when we have been faced with the opportunity to do it, there's been outcry from the neighborhood, don't get rid of my parking, the bike lane doesn't belong here. And we have acceded to that pressure. We have. That sort of not in my backyard mentality has won over the council. If we're going to implement more of any bike plan that we put forward, the 7 people sitting on the dais have to be willing to, at some point, look a neighborhood in the eye and say, no, this is going to go here. Period, end of story. And thus far, we've not been willing to do that. So for that reason, I was very interested in what Leslie had to say with regard to looking at other rights of way, looking at ways to
Utility
have
right-of-ways.
Utility rights of
Yep.
way.
Maybe we should identify
Focusing
those.
on bike-only facilities. I think we have to have a very intentional focus on connecting to regional trails, because there should be, regional connectivity. And I think we've got to look at ways to connect neighborhoods to downtown. But I think we have to do it with an understanding that there's going to be pushback, with an understanding that it's going to cost us something, whether it's the trade-offs of trees or sidewalks or one-ways or just plain old additional tax dollars, and those all come with consequences. And it forces us, I think, to choose our focuses, or I suppose foci is the correct word, but very carefully and very intentionally. Because that, I think Martin's right. I mean, that's the one existing condition, the history of why it wasn't done, that is sort of sprinkled throughout the report, but it's not all drawn together. And it's, I think it requires us to be willing to constantly think outside the box.
And I'll agree with that, because when I was really thinking of lack of political wills, if you take...
And I point that at myself as
well,
much as anyone.
you take the alternative, you take the sidewalk matrix. You want to talk about political will and cost, but it got implemented. There were some times, there was a lot of pushback.
Yeah.
And sometimes that pushback was able to be navigated, so that, okay, we're going to do things differently so we can ultimately implement it. So all I'm saying is, yeah, there's always going to be situations like that. But how do you set it up for the most success up front? So like the sidewalk
Absolutely.
matrix, how much of it was done before we really got into the, I'm trying to remember what the percentage was.
Oh, it was probably 89%.
Probably 80% went in with little to no pushback. It was great, fantastic. It was that last 20% that 80% of the battle was fought. So what I'm really
Sounds
getting
like a
at
typical
is
building project.
Well,
set it up so that you have 80, I'm just picking a number here, but 80% of it is designed so that it's going to get that success level. So now you're down to, you're confining, or you're limiting where you have to really fight those battles.
And to that point, I think, with the sidewalk matrix, we started where it made the most sense, and we were able to get a lot of things done because of that. When you look at some of these opportunities that we've had and have not taken, Prairie, from Belmont to Sealy, give or take, to me was a no-brainer of an opportunity.
Can't comment on that
And there are others, understood, and there are others like 59th Street, where you've got a significantly wider right-of-way than you would in almost any other place. Fairmount seemed to make sense, at least to some people. But at the same time, we've gotten pushback even on those more, it would seem, inviting locations for this to take place. And we haven't been willing to do it. And whether it's regret over that, whether that's a signal that maybe the community feedback that we're getting is incomplete, I don't know exactly what it is. But I know that we've had opportunities and we haven't taken them. Chris?
Thanks, Greg. So I just see it a little differently. And I want to say this first. I appreciate those who have been around a while and have been in front of a lot of that pushback. I've certainly seen my own pushback in 3 years. I certainly understand where you guys are coming from on that. To me, though, I think it's not so much political will, although I understand that concept. To me, it has more to do with the actual plan and vision that was not incorporated into policy. And what I mean by that is, an example is when we have, let's say, a 5-unit apartment building going up in a zoned area that we have to vote on to decide where we're going to do it. This council looks to the comprehensive plan and says, hey, in some ways, that's what this community is looking for here. We have this community vetted and council approved plan, comprehensive plan, that sort of gives us the direction of where we should go to take some of the, I think, emotional or the NIMBYism that goes on, to take that out of it. What we don't have as a community is that, I think, baked into our policies. We don't have a complete street policy. We don't have a commitment to this in a way. We haven't had it, which is why I think the plan did not get implemented. It wasn't so much that it was a great plan. A lot of people thought it was the thing to do. I assume the council members all agreed upon it. And then when it came to actually picking a street or something that comes up, it's like, well, we don't really have to abide by that. That's just sort of a nice to have plan. That's how it feels anyway. And the implementable part of it, to me, is creating it from a basis of policy and not just nice to have.
The comprehensive plan, though, and all of the other sort of policies that we've got that go along with it, anything that's not written into an ordinance is by definition not necessarily something that's going to be, stuck to at every point. These are visioning documents, and whether we have a standalone bike and ped plan that might be more robust than it was in 2013, we still have to be willing to, when the rubber meets the road in front of the public, say, no, we're putting this in. And they may or may not agree with that as a neighborhood, but there are times where we depart from the vision. I mean, these are ultimately not binding on the council in any particular instance.
But when staff makes recommendations, they often point to the comprehensive plan as a guiding principle. And we all look at that and see that, yeah, so while I understand that these would not be law or not be, do not dictate our decision-making, I do think it makes a difference, and I do think it demonstrates a collective vision of what we want this bike and ped network or plan or implementation to look like. And so when it does come down to a street that needs a curb, and maybe that on the plan, that's a street we need to extend the bike path, it becomes less and less about what that group of 3 houses wants versus what the community is looking for.
So you're right, because part of the reason that the sidewalk matrix was as successful as it was, because it was something that grew out of TCD2, and it was that this was a community vision, and it was part of the comprehensive plan, and it was, we're doing this, and it empowered decision makers to do it across multiple councils.
Yeah.
Because every council said, well, this is the community, so we're all doing this as part of a comprehensive plan, we're doing this as part of guiding DG. That's where I think you're going to get that sort of empowerment, if that's what you're looking for, to have it done. The other benefit was with the sidewalk is that anytime something was built, you had to have a sidewalk. Any new construction had to have a sidewalk. That doesn't quite work with a bike plan, but you can build in things like that that make it more automatic. But I'll go back to what I said in the first place. If we're going to do this, I want it to succeed. I want it to succeed like 80% did on the sidewalk matrix, and then the rest of it succeeded too. It's just, it got tougher at the end. But let's design it and understand the obstacles so that it does succeed. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah.
And I just would say, I want to make sure that doesn't limit our visioning.
Yeah.
So I don't want to come at it from a practical, well, we know this road is too narrow, we know this. I want to see what the opportunity is, and I want the public to see what the possibility is. then we decide.
Sure,
Yes.
sure. And that's
Because
exactly
it's
what I'm
gonna
getting,
get
that's exactly what I'm
yes,
getting at. So
right.
if the solution is, I'm taking a wild example here.
Yeah, yeah.
Wild example. If the solution is, village has got to go in and acquire 5 feet
Yep.
of private property through eminent domain in order to make this
Yep.
work. That's visioning.
Yes.
But we may decide, whoa, not going to do it. But I agree with you. That's why I think it's so important that as part of the existing conditions, we understand that.
So
Yeah,
I'm not as I'm not as interested in understanding what the history is on not doing it.
Right.
Like,
But
what
you
does
don't
that
know where
tell
you're
us?
going until you know where you've been.
I
but-
know, but that's where
Listen,
can I,
But the-
folks, so the intent here is to identify, challenges, right? Right, so this, but you're saying, here these are challenges, so challenges, lack of policy could be, lack of will, lack of political will, could be, lack of economic stuff, we're identifying potential challenges, right? So that's what I'm hearing. And the other thing I think we need to say here is that we spent some time talking about basically forcing things on neighborhoods that they don't want, all right? And so this is why visioning right now is so important, right? The hope is that the plan ends up identifying a way to go about this in a way that most people are accepting of, and right now is the time to participate in these visioning sessions we've got coming up, so that we can hopefully avoid, a situation where we've got a whole bunch of people coming to us and saying, hey, don't put this here, and, because I don't want to have that experience.
This isn't a visioning document.
Right.
This is an existing conditions.
I know that, but I understand that, Martin, but based on your feedback, my concern is that we want to go back and realize and uncover or remind us why we didn't do a lot of these things. And that may be existing conditions. When I think of existing conditions, I think of how wide is the street, what streets are we crossing over, what's the best way to get from A to B. Not existing conditions of, we've tried to do this in front of this person's house, they threw a fit, we didn't have the money to do it because of the economy in 2013, 3 council members didn't think this was that to me is an existing condition. That's historic. That's historic
route
review.
isn't available. That would be something that would be important to know. So, or it wasn't
We just
available.
say, we're identifying challenges.
I guess I have to disagree.
It's just
because
distill
I
it
think
down.
Two key components to anything are public input / politics, right? And money. I mean, those drive a very large portion of what we do. Now, that doesn't mean that we shouldn't have a robust vision.
Yeah.
And we absolutely should. But I think we also have to make sure that vision is realistic in terms of what it is we can accomplish in a given time period.
So I'm gonna, if I could, I'm gonna jump in here. So this has been very helpful to staff, and what could be put in the existing conditions and what could be put in the vision. One of the things that this staff member is conceptualizing is there might be some value to see if there was a pattern of decisions that were no.
That's what I was going to say.
And if they relate to physical planning, we might have an opportunity to not make the same mistakes again in the plan, getting your point, be innovative. Show me another option, right? Because if they're just going to keep repeating, we need to be more innovative, we need to do better visioning, we have to have a better plan and vision, a different one that gets at that.
Yeah.
So some of this might end up in existing conditions. It sounds like a lot of it will come to fruition in visioning. I'm glad Josh was here to hear this, because we talked about the importance of getting a little more granular in visioning in the next sessions.
Okay.
I don't want to.
See, I told you you didn't need the other board.
I don't want to cut anybody off, Mayor Pro Tem.
No, I'm good.
It's
Anybody else?
9:30. I want to make sure
Yeah,
that we also.
I just want to say, of course I'm aware that the public's input is important. Of course I'm aware that things cost money.
I'm not saying you weren't.
No, I know, but I just want to make sure I'm clear. What I'm saying is the public input on something 10 years ago, on application or implementation, seems less valuable to me than, because they haven't even seen, no one has seen what we're actually proposing. Of course I want the input of the public on the vision, because I want to make sure that it aligns with what our community is looking for.
And I think the flip side of that is there was not a lack of vision on the 2013 plan. There was a lack of implementation as a result of choices made on the ground, project to project, that are driven by a lot of the concerns that you've heard out of Martin. That's, I think, the flip side of the coin.
So echoing that, that was actually what I was going to say, was if there were patterns that were emerging that were structural and not just people were mad, then yes, let's identify those and put those in existing conditions. But those are kind of the only things that I would be interested in seeing in the existing conditions. And then the other part of this is, I will add that this is probably the benefit of doing all of these plans at the same time. I know there was a lot of conversation about that, but I think the fact that we are going to try and link all of these together is going to give the plans that we are doing a little bit more teeth, because they're going to not necessarily contradict what we're seeing in the comprehensive plan. So that's another one of my goals with any of these documents, is to not have our, whether it be an existing conditions report or a vision report, contradict one another in terms of what we're looking to do. And again, I think that's a benefit of doing all of this together is, that could have been a potential downfall of some of our other plans that, we did this in 2013, we did an update in 2017, and everything seems a little bit disparate. As technology changes, everything is shifting. Kind of lining these up at the same time might give us a little bit better of an opportunity to know kind of what our existing conditions are from a comprehensive perspective with all of these plans, and might make it a little bit more easily implementable.
Excellent point.
Very good.
I agree. Mayor Pro Tem, would it be appropriate to go on and back to Josh?
Absolutely. I was about to do the very same thing.
Document here. Thank you all.
Sorry we're not providing you with much feedback.
Yeah, we need to do better.
Again, I won't touch too much on any of the stuff that we heard Tim introduce. Last time he introduced it better than I could, but just to focus especially on the summary on page 43. And there was a little bit of discussion about whether these are key takeaways or if they need to be called something different. This is, again, a very different type of plan. It's like very much physical implementation oriented. So open to your feedback on whether there's a different structure for this last section here, but I do like the summary on page 43, which points to, I'll just lightly touch on some of these. Downtown streetscape, cohesive design, but lacks a distinctive character. Outdated streetscape, especially in the Fairview focus, or in the Fairview focus area, could use some repair. The transition area, which is in the map on page 6, the transition or connection area, there's traditional neighborhood streets that are likely to transition as redevelopment occurs, and there's additional activity between the two, these two areas of focus, downtown and Fairview Avenue. Popularity of outdoor dining versus the competition for on-street parking. Popularity of programmed events, but competition with space for more routine pedestrian activities. So when you're closing a street, are you limiting that pedestrian access? Cultural amenities, public art, perception, at least, that those are underrepresented and that they could receive a little bit more attention. There could be more opportunities for some of those, some of that public art. And then the opportunity, again, to take a look at some of these specific streetscape elements. So I do want to just open it back up to discussion and get into the same kind of discussion that we've been having on this document.
All right. Does anybody else want to start first, or should we go around the table the same way?
When we go in reverse order this time, just for kicks.
More fun.
But then
I was trying to come up with a solution for key takeaways. That's what I was focused on.
I think maybe just sticking with the giant header of issues and opportunities. I mean, it's, I'm jumping ahead, but go ahead.
Yeah, I wouldn't call it key takeaways. I was trying to think of another way. It might just be leaving, you're right, just leave the big header, issues and opportunities, because you've got the issues in orange, and then you've got basically the blue are the opportunities. I don't know if they're necessarily key takeaways. I think some of that is what we're supposed to come up with.
Yes, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
That belongs in
Right?
the next one.
Yeah,
Key
that's
takeaways.
sort of what we,
Yeah.
so the suggestion of some folks of getting ahead of our, getting over our skis, I don't think we're there yet.
No.
I think these are maybe suggested opportunities of things to think about, not sort of, here are the things to go do. I don't have comments on the report itself. So if somebody else wants to go ahead, please do. Shane?
Yeah, so in the summary and also a few other places in here, it mentions how the downtown streetscape has a cohesive design, but lacks distinctive character. And I just think that it could kind of tie, my opinion on that kind of ties in with my opinion on the outdoor dining enhancements or making it more permanent. And that being that in the current way that it is right now, you know, it leaves people guessing, like, where should I go? Where should the vehicles go? And I think it also takes away from the cohesive design of the downtown streetscape, which is why I wanted to, you know, bring forward the outdoor dining program. So I don't know, like, how much I agree with how cohesive it is right now. I think it could be more cohesive with this new plan, which is kind of like the driving force behind it. Not to like take away every parking spot, just to make it more cohesive and more purposeful, and safer. That was the one main comment that I had on the summary. I just felt like those two things kind of related. That's all I got for now.
Yeah, I didn't have much either. I did think the key takeaways should maybe be moved to the plan and elaborated on and made into recommendations rather than just sort of takeaways. I think they are very general recommendations, and I think the plan will hopefully have more specific. Knowing that there has not been any plan made yet on what is coming, so want to put that out there. Again, nothing has been decided. I just want to make sure that whatever it is that we do, it is cohesive and connective between Fairview and Main Street. So that's very important to me. And I think not just from the report, but being around downtown in the area, like, I feel like there are some very, like, areas where there are some very nice ways that it's laid out and streetscape looks very nice, and other places where it's, let's just say, lacking a bit. And it's the consistency that's going to be most important, or very important. I keep saying most. Very important to me. And then also the, I keep forgetting what they're called, but the entrance signs.
Gateways.
Thank you, the gateway, like, it's enough already. Can we just get those done?
Yes.
Which I'm sure they will, but, you know.
Speaking of something that's been a high priority action item about 12 times, it has not happened.
Yeah, no vision.
No, there were drawings. They were in this
I'm
room.
only teasing. I'm only teasing.
Still haven't
I'm
been
only
built.
teasing.
You had to do that.
I had to.
You had to do
I
that.
had to.
It's like picking at a scab.
I know. Yeah, and then I don't know. In terms of the outdoor dining stuff, I think I need to see what's recommended, because I struggle a little bit with it. I appreciate the fact that outdoor dining is popular, but I, like Danny, and I'm not saying you're saying against it, but I think it is a little disconnected. I think it's laid out a little strange in some ways, and I'm not sure. I just want to see what the ideas are before I would even support that. But
Well, I was looking forward to your new business item to close Main Street, you know.
by the way, stay tuned. Yeah. So to me, I think a lot of this is because it's design. I feel like I have to see what some of the ideas are. So the existing conditions look like it mapped out what we have, and let's go. Let's go.
All right, I'll do like I did last time, but I have far fewer this time, which I think everyone's happy. So, yeah, so, and some of them are, I'm not even gonna So I'll just start by saying I agree with a lot of what's been said. And on page 21, the last sentence, stakeholders commented that having coordinated branded signage and wayfinding is ideal, although keeping the number of signs to a minimum is important to control visual clutter. This seems somehow out of place a little bit. I'm not sure why. I didn't get those kinds of comments with other things, right? So here we're making a comment about what stakeholders are saying, but I didn't get that in any of the other. So what are stakeholders saying about these other things too? Or should we even have that in here in some way? Anyhow, that kind of stood out to me. Also the this. Oh, sorry. Yeah, there's some formatting template sort of things that are a little inconsistent between these that have just like, on this set of plans, it says draft 6/12/24 at the bottom of every page. It doesn't say that anywhere on the bicycle, but, and then just how these keynotes are handled. I would like to see more consistency between the two presentations. So I'll just say that. On the outdoor dining, so page 23, once again, we're talking about existing conditions, not so much vision here, right? So, so I just have a question, and maybe this gets documented here or not, but the temporary on-street, so the seasonal outdoor dining located in blocked off parking spaces, I would like some discussion about safety of all of this. So, and specifically how these barricades are safer or not as safe as a curb. So in other words, if you kind of follow where I'm going with this, if you were to take away these barricades and you were to make this a more permanent thing with, I'm just kind of thinking down the road. How do we really feel about all that, right? So, but we ought to say something about safety here with this. There ought to be some sort of analysis of that existing condition, and
I think like predictability inherently is probably more safer than one temporary dining area jetting out
could be
every 100 feet.
Could be.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Maybe, yeah.
On page 41, the issues and opportunities, mention here of the village and the Downtown Management Corporation working together to evaluate. There isn't a Fairview area management corporation.
No.
There isn't.
No.
So.
No.
Right, but I mean.
You have to establish an SSA.
But that's an existing
The funding
condition.
source.
Saying it's not, I'm saying it's not, it doesn't exist. And
It's not having one either.
yeah, well, this is the downtown and Fairview Focus Area Streetscapes Plan.
Right.
So, I just wanted to highlight the fact that there isn't a management corporation or anything right now for Fairview area. Also, in the second paragraph here, the connection between downtown and the Fairview focus area is identified as an important streetscape connection. If we're going to have key takeaways, that would seem to me to be a key takeaway.
Yeah.
And it's not, I didn't see where that was really listed as a key takeaway anywhere. Also on page 42, under the key takeaways for public gathering spaces and programmed events, here we're starting to talk about pocket parks, evaluate pocket parks and access to larger parks to better accommodate events, identify underutilized publicly owned property for use as public gathering spaces. Should we be saying something about our lack of or success of partnering with the Park District? Because we're really not in the parks business. So if we're, are we kind of managing, are we currently managing some parks? I would say, yeah. Some park-like property. That would seem to be part of the existing conditions analysis to me, and a kind of a takeaway here, that when we start talking about funding and parks, my first thing I think of is, hey, it's what the Park District does. I also, on the last page, 43, I circled gateways twice. Interestingly enough, though, I didn't see where that was, where were gateways mentioned anywhere in the existing conditions report? So I think that's the first place.
Even our consultants didn't want to talk about our
Actually, you raise a good point, because if this, as you pointed out, is downtown in Fairview.
Yeah, and
that's
exactly.
different gateways than the ones that are entrance to our community.
To me was, are we talking about gateways to these areas, or were we talking about the village? Right. So
what's interesting is the Fairview area could be both, the gateway to our whole village.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And a gateway to the Fairview neighborhood. Downtown is in the middle, so it can't be both, right?
Well, for anyone coming in on Metra, you get off at the train station.
Yeah.
That's your first experience of Downers Grove.
We got a gateway.
Yeah.
Giant sign on the train station.
Existing condition, true. Okay. Existing conditions summary here at the end. That summary statement, this actually kind of confused me, because this was the first time where I was posed with a summary paragraph. Everything else in both these reports talked about key takeaways. That was kind of like the little summary. This almost seems to me like it's like out of place here, like in some way. And then how does this differ? Like, if I see the word summary here, I'm liable to skip over everything that said key takeaways, and I'm just going right for the summary, and then I would miss all this. So there's some formatting here in terms of how this is organized that I think is a little bit of an issue, and that is it for me.
I do appreciate having the different streetscape types. I think that leads me to agree with Danny that perhaps things are not quite as cohesive as we think. So, we as a council often, talk about how we've done parking studies and we know there is ample parking, but yet folks don't feel like there is. I think part of that is our limited ability for signage to say where you can park and when, and I know that's going to be another conversation down the road with regard to our sign ordinance. Sorry, guys. But I think another part of that is the fact that if we've got 5 different, streetscape types, and now we've got, as we've discussed at length, just a huge variance in the way that we are implementing outdoor dining, that is going to create a lot of confusion for drivers, and also a lack of expectations of where you could probably find parking at any time. So for someone like me who doesn't, mind parking in the garage and walking a distance, it's not as big of a deal, but that lack of, as we've said over and over, consistency. So it's consistency of the streetscape formatting. It's lack of consistency of where the parking has been taken away by outdoor dining. I think we probably currently have enough parking, but the reality is that mismatch of expectations and consistency is leading to a lot of struggles with our parking as well. I also think that could potentially be a safety concern, and so I agree that I think we really need to be talking about safety as well. I do wish we had a little bit in the existing conditions report of the safety. Did we talk to any pedestrians about how safe they feel walking through downtown, with all of the tables on the sidewalks and in the street? Have we talked to have we talked to people who are drivers about how safe they feel driving past these? I think these are important things that we should know about, because it might change the way that we plan all of this moving forward.
Correct.
We see in the public feedback that we did get that they really value green space and art and culture, and we know we have a distinct lack of that in the downtown. So do we want to, in the future, consider maybe at one point, if we have an opportunity, do we have a plan for this could potentially be zoned as a pocket park if, the opportunity arises? Are there ways that we can make these better connections with culture and art, and what are some ways other communities have done it? So I think these are hopefully some things that, again, once we get to the visioning process, will kind of help us bring the community along. But I think in terms of existing conditions, I see all of these different streetscapes and the diversity of things, but there's not a lot, I don't know, for me, tying it together as to why then we might have gotten some of the public feedback that we've gotten. And I think we had a little bit, and I think that might also get to Mike's point of, well, we hear, we're seeing this in a couple spots and then we're not seeing it anywhere else. I think I'd like to see some consistency with that as well. One question that I actually had, I'll be probably the only person that brings up lighting, is that we have talked a lot about lighting and making sure that it's not shining in places, and also dark sky lighting, and I would like to know just a little bit about those existing conditions and what that looks like in these areas and how we can potentially improve upon that so that we're minimizing light pollution.
You're talking about instead of just pointing out what the lights
What the lighting,
really are.
the impact on the community, the impact on the environment, those are some things that I think would be beneficial, because those are decisions that we are going to want to be making moving forward. There was something about, I should have written it down. Oh yeah, that I did write it down. It was, with the outdoor dining, as we talk about some of these existing conditions, one suggestion that I did have is that, is there a way that we could put a little bit of a map to show which parking spots have been removed and where we have outdoor dining, just so that we can get a visual of what that looks like?
That's a great suggestion.
Because I think that, again,
Josh, so we can get that to you.
yeah, I think that might help. Having that in here might really help with us also kind of recognizing, this could really be a pain point for some folks who are trying to park here, and this is why. And then the only other consideration that I didn't see here that I think I would like to see is, we've had resident feedback about when there's truck deliveries or things like that. Do we have those access points, whether it be alleyways, or kind of what does that look like as well? Because that's going to play into how pedestrians and outdoor dining and cars kind of all combine, because again, we have that little bit off Curtis for Bar Cheeto, but then when you have a concern that maybe it's a street or a corner full of restaurants who are all getting different deliveries, how does that play into it? And so kind of where are some of those pathways? I don't know if that's possible, but I think those would be things that would help us identify the pressure points for folks who are feeling really frustrated in the downtown.
I think I'm going to be relatively brief on this one, too. I agree with a lot of what's been said in terms of the content of the existing conditions memorandum. I think it fairly accurately represents, what downtown is like, what the Fairview Avenue corridor is like. Would I kind of maybe recaption the issues and opportunities section? Yes, but I think you've already heard that feedback.
Yeah.
What I took away from the existing condition, or I guess the biggest takeaway, was the lack of consistency downtown. I think we're fairly consistent when it comes to a large chunk of Main Street and then Curtis back east, and I think it kind of falls apart after that. And I'd like to see that become something that is addressed. I'd like to see, and I'm really getting into the visioning end of it now, but enhancing the physical connections with Fairview and downtown and between them, so that area in between is very important. I think we've got real opportunities, in particular at Fairview, with regard to community art space, with regard to other amenities we might be able to offer to those 40% or so of Fairview train riders who are walking. This is potentially a third rail, pun intended, but overhead utilities, relocating them and overcoming that challenge. I think that's one more thing to add to a potential TIF district. And since we're really thinking down the road, I think the idea of whether it's a downtown management-like entity for Fairview or whether it's an expansion of the Downtown Management Corporation in their
So both of
charge.
those things you're saying are part of the existing condition observations that the overhead utilities detracts or could detract from appearance.
Absolutely.
And the organization doesn't.
Yeah,
Okay.
and it potentially frees up more space for other things. And then, yeah, expanding the charge of the Downtown Management Corporation or creating something new for Fairview, I think, long-term would be a tremendous benefit to that area and potentially the downtown as well. Martin, I'll circle back to you. You kind of started things, but it felt like you might have more to say.
No, I mean, the challenge is if we're sticking to existing conditions, to be consistent with what I said before, I think we need to understand what the existing conditions are and the barriers, and I don't just mean the ones that are put up to protect outdoor dining. And who knows, maybe barriers are safer than curbs.
They might be. I'm just.
Who knows? But I do think we need to follow the same approach here as the discussion that I shared with respect to the bike plan is, okay, why weren't things done? Like, for example, give you a goofy example. Once upon a time, Linda Kunze thought that if you recreate the sort of downtown feeling of Larimer Square in downtown Denver, where you connect this whole section of downtown with lights, and it's just something that brings people downtown. It's simple. It ties things together. It's the heart that was outside after the ice festival stayed up for how long, and people flocked to it for pictures. I mean, it doesn't matter why, it worked. So lights across the street sound okay, big deal, but there are many cities where their downtown does that and it's quite effective. There were reasons why that didn't happen. So knowing things like that sometimes would be important, and I'm wondering if we need to get into some of the property ownership issues, because one of the things that we haven't talked about is there have been a lot of challenges with downtown over the years due to, I'll be very polite, property owner issues. And the lack of cooperation, because contrary to popular belief, the village just can't go Shazam and all of a sudden change everything.
Right.
There are business owners who actually are entitled to run their business and their properties the way they see fit, and they have to go along with it. So yes, some sort of a Fairview Management Corporation or extension of would be a good idea as part of a next step. It's but maybe noting that one has it and one doesn't, one has an SSA and a TIF and the other one doesn't, that's all fine. But I think the SSA, TIF, and those kind of things for a Fairview Business District would be the next document.
I was just pointing out that it
For
doesn't
sure.
exist.
No. I think that's a fair observation. That one has it and one doesn't. But I would also want to think if there's other thing, and there's not as many come to mind, but if there were other barriers to doing things that we've talked about over the years, and I just throw out the lights as one example, why it couldn't happen. I think that's important because we can have a lot of conversations about, hey, wouldn't it be great to have some more consistency, regardless of what we do with outdoor dining, and I know this has come up before, that we have, as part of the permit process, that all the restaurants have to have the same consistent outdoor tables and chairs. So it ties the whole downtown together. That might sound like a great idea, I'd love to do that, but what are the practical challenges of doing that? That's, I think, important to know. And again, to your point, Chris, I think we need to have a vision, but the vision needs to be grounded in reality and an understanding of what the obstacles are, because I think a lot of what has been misconstrued is there's been some discussion about what might be, what could be, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to happen. And I do think that we need to point out here that the gateway signs, if we're talking about, are we talking about the village gateway signs, or are we talking about gateway signs to the downtown in Fairview? Because there's only one instance where that's the one and the same thing. Because I think most of us are thinking of the gateway signs to the community. Downtown has different signs. Fairview would have both. So I think that's an important distinction. But gateway signs have been talked about, literally have been designed and budgeted for, and didn't happen. So just because we're envisioning things and we're thinking aspirationally doesn't mean that things are necessarily going to happen. But I think it's important to understand what could be and how one would get there, and then understanding what the trade-offs are. because, there are even trade-offs with setting up an SSA to support a downtown management or extending one. The whole SSA history for the downtown is a lesson in of itself, quite frankly. What's in, what's out.
Might go and bring it up to,
No.
launch into a conversation about
It's a fair point. It's a fair point. But what I'm going back to is, I think, as part of existing conditions, I'll say what I said with the other report, is if there's important history, and I'm not just suggesting somebody screamed and yelled, but what practical barriers were there that prevented a good idea from not coming into fruition with respect to the downtown? Because I think that's important. I had one other comment about Gateway's already talked about. I think your lighting point was very good. Years ago, I would have talked about the crosswalks, but I think we finally solved that.
Thank you, Mark.
I think finally.
And we'll make sure they're addressed in the next iteration.
Because that's super important in terms of making the downtown look together and cohesive and well-maintained. Maybe I missed it, but if we think of the downtown a little bit more broadly, the recent addition of the landscaping, particularly around.
I think it's mentioned in there. Probably.
Yeah, I think it's mentioned. Maybe I just skipped over it.
Yeah. 27, trees and planting.
Page 15.
Thank you.
Yeah, trees and planting.
Interesting that the consultant probably didn't know that was new.
Well, and that's kind of where I was going, and yes, it is here, and I probably just looked at the first, and I didn't look all the way down. But I think that's important to note that's a new existing condition, because I think even some of that, and it's kind of a mix here, so maybe it's pointing out the stuff that's new. Because the planters we've had, the recycling bins we've had for a long time, but some of the other stuff is relatively new, and I think it's made a big improvement, and something like that can definitely tie together other areas. We're going to need a lot more bike racks.
That's right.
Sounds good. Actually, that has been something that's come up with several residents.
I think that's it for now. All right. Other things have been covered.
Yeah, just a couple things that that came up. Nothing too major. I think one, as we were talking, I was kind of looking through this and noticing the sign and wayfinding analysis, and I think they talked about that we have them. I think what caught my attention was signs are attached to telephone poles and light poles and their own freestanding poles, and there's 2 to a sign and 1 to a sign, and it does, again, we talked a lot about consistency, and I don't know what all the legal ramifications of where you have to have a sign or don't have to have a sign, but we have these beautiful light poles and then there's a sign on it, and it seems like maybe we could be a little more judicious in that. And then I think I would just say, as we were talking about the outdoor dining, and I hope that whatever the recommendation that comes back is future-proof, because I think we have an investment in our community from restaurants, and we certainly appreciate that. But we're talking about 20, 30, 40, 50 years of impact, and we just want to make sure we're not looking short-term on some of this long-term changes. So
Yeah.
just a thought I had as we were discussion.
All right.
And lastly, I would love to know why we do not have gateway signs. That is a history I'm very interested to hear about, because that seems not right now. Not right now.
Same reason why I'm still sitting 801 Burlington.
I'm looking forward to that. Sounds like
That's
political
for some
will to
reason.
me.
You're absolutely right.
Although technically
Okay,
it
that's
should
scary.
Yeah.
Okay.
A lot of other things were prioritized.
That's going to be fun.
Yep.
So we've heard a lot from the council. I'd like to see if any members of the public have any input at this time.
You want it?
Well, I had just asked
You
for
really
it.
want
so.
it? First
I mean, I heard
you
it's ridiculous under your breath.
First one I would put up is Welcome to Downers Grove Food Court. That's the first sign I would put up. what in the heck are you people thinking? And what is the romance you got going about this turning everything into the restaurants? I haven't heard, not one word have I heard about worrying about the businesses that are downtown besides the restaurants. Not one word. How are they gonna make it? What about parking? Nothing. It's, why are we favoring the restaurants so darn much? I think we've done more than our share with COVIDs and make an allowance for the restaurants. And now you want to give them more space and take the parking away. Let the restaurants stand on their own. Make it or break it. I am sick of hearing all this about supporting the restaurants. And why are you putting all your eggs in one basket if this thing goes through? And how are you gonna, what's gonna happen in the wintertime? You're not gonna have people out sitting on the sidewalk eating. How is Downers Grove downtown gonna make it when everyone's got winter coats on and they're running it? I don't understand your reasoning on this at all, and a lot of people don't. People I've been talking to, it's like they all think you're crazy. And I think you're gonna get, I hope, a big pushback on this if you take this further. It doesn't make any sense at all. We've got a narrow, compared to other towns, our downtown is not very wide. And I get the impression you all think you got a blank piece of paper out here. We can do this, this, and this, and this. We're limited what you can do. It's crowded downtown to begin with. Traffic is a bitch. Trains, of course, you can't do anything about. But trying to get through downtown, you see that every day with the backups both directions. And now we're worrying about giving more space to the restaurants? The heck with them. They can make it or break it. I don't think the rest of the town should have to give all this allowance to them. And we don't know, that market could change other towns around us. Maybe they're gonna start, I mean, you know, you're gonna have one pie and we're all gonna slice it up into the same market. You don't know. But I think this is ridiculous. I think it's very chancy, and I think it's an insult to people in town. And I really think this should be a referendum. I shouldn't, one table full of people making a decision with this much impact on Downers Grove. I think the town should have a say in this, whether they want it or not. If they do, okay. But just with all these grandiose ideas you're going, I don't know. That's my opinion, but I'm not the only one that feels that way, and I think you're all going to find out as this goes further. I hope. So, next.
Okay, so I'm going to talk really quickly about Oak Park and the bike. So I think somebody should look into that because my cousin lives there. So if you go on the village page for our park, they're going through the same thing. They don't have biking downtown. They want to do what you guys are talking about. There's a whole dispute on that. My cousin said that they push that they're a bike place. Some of the bike paths are only 1 mile long. But there isn't biking in downtown Oak Park. Consistency, you want consistency. The outdoor dining right now doesn't go any farther than the car does. So you don't have to go like this. People don't have, when they drive down, they should assume it's a car or it's a person. So it's already fine. It's not like, oh, there's one section of tables and then there's another. Exactly like you said, you want consistency, and everybody's going to decorate and put whatever kind of tables they want out there. No one's out there dining now. When we had our last meeting on the 18th, nobody was out there dining either. I went past before and after. It was too humid. They only dine certain time. Why don't you look at the tax revenue that the bars and the restaurants are bringing in their busiest time in the winter, which is November, December, and January, when the people are inside. They're saying they need all that, then it should be double what they're bringing in for June, July, and August. What they're bringing in the tax revenue should be double. You are really seeming to favor just the restaurants. And if you put only outdoor dining on Pierce Tavern and Foxtail side, I'm sure the other restaurants on the other side are not going to be happy about it. And even though I don't want you to do it, it is not fair. It is not fair to put outdoor dining just for one side of the street for those particular businesses and not the other. I don't want it at all. I think it's ridiculous. Now you have Fairview. Fairview is open, you're designing it, now's your chance. Make the sidewalks longer. wider. Make like Marquee has, where they have, supposedly the guy from Foxtail said, we had to build from sidewalk to sidewalk. Marquee has a nice big opening. They have green space inside there. Tell any new resident, the apartment building that's going to go up the other side of the railroad tracks, that they have to have some kind of patio. If they're going to have a restaurant, they have to have a patio or something. Because if they did a patio, they could do it like Lou Malnati's in Naperville, where they did in the fire station. So they could still use it year round. They close it off. There's bars up by Home Depot over there. There's a beer tap. They use it here. There's one on Ogden Avenue. There's other alternatives than to be sitting outside, whether you have parking or not. Who wants to sit next to exhaust? Maybe Cadence, which is owned by Foxtail, understand, that's a nicer place to eat. Angelo's Patio, the Irish pub, I can't think of it right now, sorry, Mr. Martin.
That's okay.
Ballydoyle. Those are nicer places to sit. I mean, it's still not in front of the ocean or golf course or anything like that, but sitting on the sidewalk, it's just not right. You're taking away from Anderson Bookstore. That's why there's 15-minute parking, because their people can't get parking. How long ago was that study done? Was it done recently that says that we have parking? No, it was done a long time ago. I don't think we have a recent study about the parking. And now we have another bar that's going to be open late night and serving tapas. Where are these people parking? How many parking spots do you think are in the parking garage? How many parking spots? Why don't you add up? Somebody add up the parking spots. I went and drove there and even added them up because I didn't want a chance that the numbers were incorrect, because I didn't want to get you wrong information last time. And then go to Pierce. How many employees do you have? When they tell you they have 40 employees, okay, 40 employees. And how many does Foxtail have? Okay, where are these parking spaces? Yes, I know everybody doesn't have a car, but everybody doesn't walk here. Everybody doesn't ride their bike here. Their customers come. All these small business, the game store, all that, I hear it from my clients, not about having a parking issue, and God bless, I don't have a parking issue. I will if this continues, but I hear, oh yeah, I can't go over there. I tried to go to Anderson. There was nothing in the back. There's nothing over by the tracks. So I came over here, so now I'm going to have to go run over there. I have to go over there. Oh, I'm parked over here by you. They park in my alleyway so they can go to the cleaners. It's not fair. The cleaners has a 15-minute spot. You got to just look at the whole picture. Again, putting all your eggs in one basket. All these, you got barbershops, you got hair salon, and if my place was on there, I wouldn't be happy. I don't think that their spot should go any farther than their property. So Giordano's should not be in front of the jewelers. And Pierce Tavern is going to say, well, I lose so much because I have the crosswalk over here. I should be over Laguna. That's not fair. That is not fair. You are people that are driving by. That's why they pay so much money for rent to be on Main Street, so they can get the free advertisement. But if people are sitting in front of my business, that's not right. I don't know what you're. And you want to say, oh, you got to put your foot down. You got to say, oh, yeah, we're going to vote for that because, no. You have to be more considerate. People voted for you to put you in there because we want you to do what we would like to see. And if you're only getting this much feedback, this many people, said, oh, this is what I want, that's a small percentage for the amount of money. You already spent $1 million on consultants. How much more money is this going to cost? You got Angelo's Pizza. He pays for his own parking. He has parking there. He has outdoor dining. He pays for that on his property tax. Ballydoyle does the same thing. They have theirs that they have to pay for. I don't know it. You're just looking at, oh, it would be great, temporarily. Close down Main Street. I don't care if you close it down for the whole freaking summer. But in the wintertime, I lose 3 spots every winter when you guys snowplow because you don't have anywhere to put the snow. So I lose 3 spots. Is that right? Now there's not, and I said, are you going to put the snow on top of the sidewalk then? No. We're going to have some movable art. It's going to cost more money. Yes, I think you should have the people should be voting on that. It's their money. This is ridiculous. Thank you.
Colleen, I'm going to sound like a really calm person. You have false equivalence in your summary regarding a number of things, but particularly outdoor dining is popular, but competes for space with on-street parking and pedestrian circulation clearances. The on-street parking is popular with a handful of restaurants and a handful of people. The parking spaces are there for the entire community to use. The people out of the walking distance who come in, to come to the library, to come to shop, to visit their therapist on whatever floors, and the basement areas of some of these buildings and the second stories are professional offices, tax preparers and what have you. They need places to park that are convenient. I'm sure it was brilliant, and I just had, it went by my mind. But with the parking study is, if it's not stale, it's wrong. I have been to the library many times over the last few weeks, at all times of the day and evening. It is packed. There are no places to park in the parking lots. The handicap spots are taken. The 15-minute spots are taken. I parked there because there's no place to park to run into to Anderson Books and a couple of other places. The parking lot across the street is full. There is not adequate parking. I don't care what your studies say. Ask anybody who wants to come downtown and frequent any business downtown. It's always a nightmare. And it's late. I'll save some of the steam for another meeting, but I want to say, with respect to, we're going to jam these bike lanes down neighborhoods' throats because that's what we want. The 7 people of you, how dare you? I mean, really, how dare you? These neighborhoods and these people have homes that is the most expensive and biggest asset that they have, and you're going to say we're going to change your use and enjoyment of your home, and because we want to make bicyclists happy. That's just wrong, and it is arrogant, and there are no words. I mean, and the one thing I noticed about going back over all these things over the last months that I've been attending and looking at, oh gee, they did this and they did this, I didn't remember that. But one of those priority action items that you were all talking about was gaming. And you decided to punt that one to a referendum. This should be a referendum too. You ought to have to sell this to the public just like any school district does to do a building program. And to make, one other thing about all this stuff, the guiding DG stuff, it's all glossy, high-level, happy talk that it's a beautiful public relations campaign. But I went to the pop-ups thing at the DG Grove Fest, thank you. And it's little kids with, come on in, how do you, just very friendly, lovely thing. But it's not, what do you like about Downers Grove? What don't you like about Downers Grove? Yeah, I didn't see anybody say, we're looking at an outdoor dining plan that may take out parking. We may be putting outdoor cafes in parking lots. We may do this, and the other. What would you think about that if we did that? You're not being specific about what your message is. You're not being specific about Fairview Avenue, the people over there. We're going to wake up one day and find out that the zoning on the next door neighbor's houses are all different. They're did you really think you're going to wake up one morning and the neighbor's going to have a business in his garage? You're not being specific in what the messages are about all of this stuff. It's all high level, it's all glossy, and it is all very happy. And it just isn't. It isn't in the detail and the depth it would have to be if you had to sell this for a referendum. And your PR people are doing a great job for you. I mean, they're doing what you want them to do, but it's not fair to the public because it's not really a clear picture of how all this is going to drastically change Downers Grove. That's my opinion. Your turn.
Okay. I'm addressing two different issues. I want to emphasize the critical role played by two of the streetscape components highlighted in the report, art and gathering spaces. These elements contribute significantly to our well-being, identity, and overall quality of life. Regarding art and culture, art beautifies our surroundings and streetscapes, making our village more vibrant and inviting. Public art installations and cultural events foster a sense of identity and pride among residents. Exposure to art can reduce stress, enhance creativity, and promote mental health well-being. Regarding gathering spaces, this is also something that's close to my heart. I once did a documentary photography project on the role of public spaces in democracies. Gathering places offer opportunities for people to connect, fostering a greater sense of community and belonging. Right now, quite frankly, our downtown says, come spend money and leave, with the exception of the library, of course. The report suggests reimagining the streetscape environment to accommodate both public and private gatherings serving people of all ages, abilities, and backgrounds. Both of these elements are mentioned in the report as opportunities for enhancing our community character and creating distinctive features that underscore and reinforce our desire, and I do believe everyone in this room would agree with this, to be a welcoming and inclusive community.
If I could have one personal point of privilege that I want to follow up with, and that is, at, again, a risk of being not the last to be heard, but I want to make it clear that I have never said in any of my communications with people things that are not true. I have never said that there's going to be that the town is going to take away all the parking. If I read your statements, and if they say, are you going to be, are they going to take away all our parking permanently? I'm saying maybe, this is what is on the table, this is what is under consideration. If you have a thought, go take the survey, go to the Downers Grove website, get involved. Now is the time. That is all I do. And I have never called anybody a name or impugned your character. So please keep that in mind.
All right, any closing thoughts from the council?
Just a couple, because they didn't fit before. So actually, one of the things that was said, so I was actually at the Grove Fest event where we gathered some information, and I actually also felt like the questions that were being asked maybe weren't quite specific enough. It seemed a little general to me. So I wish we had done a little bit more with that. That was just one event I was at, so I don't know if that's typical of everything. And then the other thing is for the visioning events that are coming up, you mentioned, Josh, that you had targets and goals with other things. What are our do we have a target number of respondents we're expecting to be at these visioning events, and what are we going to do to get as many people there as we can? Because it's only valuable if we have a lot of people. So, and I don't know, how can we help with that even? So, right.
That's a good point. I could go through this real quickly here. So, as far as the target, I think, given the excellent turnout, it was hard to tally up people because so many people were coming and going in the kickoff, but I think we estimated probably 200 plus people at the kickoff event. So that would be an excellent turnout in any community, in any single community visioning workshop. Some of the best ones that our firm has done have been in the hundreds. We are spreading it across 3 events. I fully anticipate the afternoon one would be a smaller turnout, but definitely hoping to get into the triple digits across the 3. Absolutely. I did want to. I'm going to stand just to stretch my legs, if you don't mind. Give you just a little preview of what we are going to be doing. So, again, I would encourage everyone in this room, with any planning project, whatever the formulation of the steering committee is, we always encourage the guiding committees, boards, councils to come out and participate alongside the community members in this exercise. Hear what the community members are going to be saying. We will provide a packet at each table that'll have categories and prompts for what the breakout groups want to see. I guess I should step back. First, when people come in, they can sit down and mingle around for a bit, but then we will get people to gather around tables. So tables of 4 to 10, minimum 4, I would say, maximum 10, to work on a breakout exercise together with their neighbors. And they'll be prompted through these different categories: housing and residential areas, commercial and retail areas. We will have an inset on the work map for downtown and Fairview Avenue focus areas for people to participate, make sure that they're looking at those areas in a little bit more zoomed in scale. Business and manufacturing areas, vehicular transportation, bike and pedestrian transportation, community facilities and infrastructure, including parks and recreation and open spaces, and then an other category. So the way it works is, over the course of an hour and 15 minutes, we will prompt people through these exercises. We've asked the different sub-consultant teams, Baxter and Woodman, HTG, and also GZA, the sustainability team, to weigh in on how these different categories impact their planning processes. So they've helped us take our typical visioning workshop prompts and craft them to be applicable to each of the different planning studies. So the breakout groups of 4 to 8 or 4 to 10, we will walk them through the exercise. We'll urge them to both take notes in their packet and on their map. As we go from category to category, we'll suggest that they move on to the next category. Some groups may really just want to focus on bike and pedestrian stuff. That's fine. And at the end of the evening, we will have them report back and present their ideas that they discussed and of their visionary, we will urge them to coalesce around a visionary big idea that they had at the table. We absolutely will get feedback, a lot of feedback on each and every one of these categories, and we will disseminate it back to the different sub-consultant teams. Baxter and Woodman will be participating alongside us, but we'll be asking questions and GZA will be there as well. We'll be asking questions that pertain to each of the different categories and each of the different planning projects. This is really one of my favorite parts of the planning process. People get into it. Some groups do a ton of coloring, and you'll see a really marked up map. Some are really more focused on the written part of the packet, getting all their notes in and articulating their group's vision, and getting people talking and excited about this kind of stuff. I hope to just see a huge amount of participation. We're getting the word out. And this is to speak to the pop-ups. The pop-ups are very small, quick hit. People come by for an ice cream at the ice cream truck, and you can ask them maybe one question and direct them back to the website. This is going to be an opportunity where we're going to be talking to people for over an hour about all this different stuff, and then we're going to be hearing back from them, collecting their maps, collecting their packets, summarizing it, and that's going to go right into the visioning goals, and it's going to really pivot us into the next part of this planning process. So it will be a very fun evening. This exercise even stand alone by itself. I've done it in everywhere from a convention center type room to a church basement, and it always gets people talking no matter the turnout. And then pairing it with some of the interesting stuff that all together we'll have as part of the surrounding stuff will make it a very fun event, just like the kickoff was. So we're really looking forward to it and hoping for great participation. So hope that we'll see you at one of them.
I just wanted to add, one of the things that the staff team has been talking to Josh and his team of consultants is being specific to Downers Grove and tying the key takeaways and issues and opportunities, and even some of the trade-off discussions, weaving them into their standard format to get the meaningful information that this council wants. We get the sense that the Downers Grove community wants to be a little more granular and a little more focused on some of these issues. So we've been talking through that in our planning meetings, and we'll see those things in the visioning prompts.
Good.
Excellent.
Oh, this is just more of the instructions, but this is what we'll go through with the groups. And, yeah, so looking forward to it. It's going to be a fun week. So tell your friends and neighbors, and we want the widest participation possible.
Great. Martin?
I have a question. Would it be possible to go back to the Gantt chart for a second? Thank you. So we're still in the existing conditions phase, right?
Yes, we are. We're kind of rounding it out here.
All right, so just to take downtown Fairview focus area streetscapes, just for example, prototypes and improvements. What are prototypes and improvements?
I would have to go back to Hitchcock and make sure that I'm articulating what they're planning to do correctly.
Okay. Well, I mean, I know what prototype means, and part of this is rhetorical.
Sure.
I know what prototypes mean, and I know what preliminary plans mean, and I know what recommendations mean. What I'm getting at is that we haven't actually seen any drawings or conceptual diagrams or anything of what anything might even look like for anyone to react to. So what we're talking about is existing conditions, and there's a lot of what might be and what might be explored. It's going to be a month or 2 or 3 before we ever have something that would show, okay, here's the current street, this is what it might look like. What do you think? We're months away from that. So one of my concerns is that no one has anything really to react to yet. If you have a concept of, under no circumstances do I ever want anyone ever sitting outside eating outside a restaurant, okay, that's you're entitled to your opinion. Or you could say, I don't want any parking because I hate cars. That's your opinion. But right now, nobody has anything concrete to look at and react to. Back to your point, Commissioner. I think it was Acadia on the Green. Someone correct me. Acadia on the Green, where when we had an information booth at, I think it was Heritage Festival at the time, there were renderings and drawings before any final decisions were made for people to react to. So they weren't thinking in the abstract about, do I like 75 degrees or do I like 80 degrees? They actually had something to look at and react to. And I just want to be very clear that I'm understanding that we haven't even gotten there yet. So we're still in the very conceptual mode, and I realize that folks can have visceral reactions to concepts. That's fine, either positive or negative. But for example, where public spaces might be for gathering or art, we don't even have any drawings of where that might be, where that's even feasible for anyone to react to. We're still dealing with concepts and what might be. I remember thinking about what gateway signs might be, and we still don't have them. We'll talk about that later. But I want to be very clear that we don't even have anything concrete to react to yet in terms of what it might look like, in terms of, oh, I see what that would be, because that's to come in September, October, and as I'm looking at this Gantt chart, quite a ways yet. And I realize that I don't think anybody in this room is prepared, well, maybe some people in this room are prepared to say, I want to see what it looks like. Forget it. But for most people, there's nothing to react to yet, including us, because we haven't seen what it might look like. And my guess is that Commissioner Davenport probably has a really good idea. People talk about concepts, and then all of a sudden you bring them drawings, and they have a different reaction. But they have to see the drawings, and we haven't done any of that yet.
Also, no, you never.
I just want to be real clear that there's 2 things going on here. One, there will be things to react to later that are much more specific. And number 2, I would completely agree with you that opportunities to actually show that to people so they can react to it is something that we have done before and absolutely should do. And that includes bike and pedestrian plan. That includes Fairview. That includes streetscapes. We'll have to figure out how to do the environmental plan and some kind of a graphic so people can react to it. But we're not there yet. And I think that's when you really get the most valuable feedback, because people can see, oh, this is what you're talking about. And then we have opportunities to actually show people what a public art space might look like. And then they can either react positively or they can react negatively, or they can say, yeah, but how about something different? And that's what we would, I think, would want to take opportunities, and I'm sure that's what we're talking about doing, is being able to show those kinds of more concrete drawings, if you will, that people can then react to and then we can get feedback on. I just want to make sure I'm real clear on that's where we're going.
No, I think to try to put a capper on this, what you're hearing is that we're ready to start visioning. And we know that's coming up in the next 2 to 3 to 4 months. And at that point, things will start to get much more real. And we'll have a lot to talk about and a lot of decisions to make over the period of the next 10 to 12 months.
Just to be clear, I would not want any drawings or any renderings of anything going out in front of people without us having some consensus about it first.
100%.
Because what happens is, and I know this, I never put something in front of a client that I haven't thought through pretty thoroughly myself, and I feel like that's in their best interest, right? And the reason I don't show 3 different possibilities really early on, and I wait, is because once you put an image in front of people, it instantly becomes, oh, that's what you want to do, right? Even no, it doesn't matter how many times we might say to people, this is just a possibility, this is something we might consider doing, what do you think of that? I just know, it's just kind of a human reaction. When you see that, you go, oh, look, this is all well thought out, this is really what we want to do. So I think it's really important that we control, that we control the narrative around this as well. So so before we put anything out and anything's presented to people, it needs to be something that we've all looked at and approved.
We're not even a cocktail napkin.
So we're not even, exactly.
No,
That's what I'm saying. I even avoid the cocktail napkins.
All right, so I think I'm going to be really blunt. The existing conditions memorandum horse is dead, and we've still got other business to attend to. Believe it or not, we're not done.
Sorry, I don't
Really?
mean to interrupt. Well, it's about the visioning
Okay.
session that we
That we haven't
clearly
gotten to
glossed.
yet?
No, the visioning
that's-
sessions that
they're coming up.
they're conducting next week or whatever it is.
2 weeks.
2 weeks. Will we be collecting any sort of demographic or information on those who are participating? And if not, can we? We don't need names. We just need, I think we need age. We
Age
talked
groups.
last time.
Yes, that's
Age
for sure.
groups and maybe time and DG.
Just walking with
We
your
figure out a
we
way
can-
that they
we'll
can
talk. Let us talk to all together about
Yeah.
that. I
Fence
mean,
it.
we usually use a pretty standard sign-in sheet, and of course,
Yeah.
some people aren't going to want to sign in,
Sure.
and it would.
But you could ask people to self-identify, because that's what you did at the Grove Fest.
Right.
Is that you put a
They don't have to
sticker.
put their name on it,
If you're,
just to
if you're,
get it.
if you're willing to do it, a sticker in
We
the age
could
group. where
definitely
you're at.
bring that same age board.
Something like
same
that?
board,
That'd be great.
Okay.
And for sure.
Yeah, I think that would be helpful. We had concerns last time, I think, many of
Yes.
us, about where it's skewed. And
Okay.
so we're just seeing if these have any change in that.
I forgot that they already made that that pop-up board, so that
Yeah.
would be one of the
Use that
perfect, and we could have more than one too, if there's different entrances to the
Yep.
venue. So
Cool.
we'll talk to them about that for sure.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
I'm
This
sorry.
is- Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's 10:41. We've still got an exec session ahead of us. I think, like I said, this horse is dead. I'm not trying to be rude, but.
No, it's okay. I just found the photos that you published with the pictures of the street, so.
Okay. There's going to be another year's
I'll see you
worth of
next week.
opportunity for public comment. Could I get a motion to convene into closed session?
Mayor Pro Tem, I move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C2 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or their representatives or deliberations concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees. I further move to convene into closed session pursuant to Section 2C3 of the Illinois Open Meetings Act to consider the selection of a person to fill a public office as defined in this act, including a vacancy in a public office when the public body is given power to appoint under law or ordinance, or the discipline, performance, or removal of the occupant of a public office when the public body is given power to remove the occupant under law or ordinance.
Second.
I'm assuming there's no discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Sadowski Fugit?
Aye.
Commissioner Gilmartin?
Aye.
Commissioner Davenport?
Aye.
Commissioner Tully?
Aye.
Commissioner Glover?
Aye.